I'm sure the countdown has left many of you thrilled to begin with today's symposium. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning I bid to the honorable judges, teachers, guests, participants, and everyone present. Welcome all to the live streaming of the 9th Online Fully Residential Schools International Symposium of 2021. Atira, aren't we lucky to have our symposium on such a lovely day?
Yeah, super. Ladies and gentlemen, the Fully Residential School International Symposium was initiated in 2011 and was organized by Ministry of Education Malaysia under the Fully Residential Schools Management Division in partnership with the National Commission for UNESCO Malaysia. Through a systematic research and creation of video presentation on cutting-edge issues, we hope to instill the culture of critical thinking, decision-making, as well as creativity amongst the youth. In line with this event's objectives, our aim is to nurture towering personalities as well as leadership qualities for our leaders of tomorrow. You are all cordially invited to watch the presentations on the sub-theme Climate Crisis and Change During the Pandemic, the Promise of a Better Tomorrow, and later have a chance to pose any questions to the presenters.
Now, allow me to inform you that there will be an online quiz posted in the chat box at the end of the first session today. We have different sets of questions for our online quizzes according to the tracks. For your information, if you manage to answer all 80% of the questions correctly, you will be rewarded with an International Achievement Certificate. The online quiz will be open until tomorrow on Monday at 10 a.m. Make sure to be on the lookout for the quiz. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue with the presentation, I would like to firstly introduce you to our esteemed judges. Before introducing to the esteemed judges, let us invite the judges to the studio with us. The Chief Judge is Dr. Anne Rowena David, the Lecturer of University Science Malaysia. The second judge with us today is Ms. Mastina Wati binti Ahmad from Sekolah Menengah Sains Batu Pahat. And the third and final judge is Ms. Wan Haila binti Wan Yahya from Sekolah Menengah Sains Muzaffar Shah. Selimi, I forgot to introduce myself earlier. My name is Alia Natasha binti Abrari, and with me today I have my co-moderator Nur Atira Fauzi Abbas, and we are both from Sekolah Seri Puteri Cyberjaya. Now Atira, would you care to introduce the rules to us?
I'd love to. Before we begin, do allow me to read the rules. Firstly, the presentation must focus on the sub-theme assigned to each theme. In this track, the sub-theme is Climate Crisis and Change During the Pandemic, the Promise of a Better Tomorrow. Secondly, the duration of the video presentation should not be more than 10 minutes. And lastly, a question and answer session will be conducted after each presentation. Now, as planned for today, we will have 50 teams overall to present their research videos, and we are going to look at presentations from the first 5 teams. To start us off, I'd like to invite Aiman Hakimi bin Muhammad Abdul Rahman and Farhana Arlia binti Khairul Saleh from Sekolah Berasrama Penuh Integrasi Jemput to present their video presentation entitled A Stepping Stone Towards a Better Future. The stage is yours.
Climate crisis is not just a problem for our future. It is also impacting us every day, everywhere. Words by Vandana Shiva. Hi and Assalamualaikum, you're watching Earth Today. Everything about environment directed by Puan Nur Hafiza binti Yaakob only on Intash TV.
Looks like we are having a little technical problem. Let us wait a few moments before the video is presented again.
Climate crisis is not just a problem for our future. It is also impacting us every day, everywhere. Words by Vandana Shiva. Hi and Assalamualaikum. You're watching Earth Today. Everything about environment directed by Fuan Hafiza binti Yaakob only on Intash TV. I'm Farah Naala binti Karisale, your host. I'm not alone today. Let me introduce to you our special guests.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Nurul Afika Safwa.
I'm Aiman Hakimi bin Muhammad Abdul Rahman.
My name is Fathal Arifin Damam.
Our topic today is stepping stone towards a better future. But what does it mean? So, apparently, COVID-19 has affected our daily routine that caused problems and disasters to our environment and also our climate. So the question is, how does COVID-19 affect our routine? What have we done until affected the environment? What crises that our nature are having right now? Is there anything that we can do to solve those problems? Those questions gonna be answered. Don't worry. Sneak peek. We're gonna talk about why our Earth is in danger. First, produce of plastic. Second, less recycling activity. And third, usage of PPE and also medical equipment. Back to our main stepping stone. So it means actions that we can take to overcome the crisis that happened during this COVID-19 and produce a better future for our environment. First, let's talk about our professor's research.
Throughout our research period, we have conducted a survey where we asked the public about their opinions on changes that happened during the pandemic. We asked the public whether they agree or disagree with our opinions. Our opinions ranges from the increase in plastic production and the lessening in recycling activities. And the result shows that the majority of the public agrees with our opinions that there are changes during the pandemic that can affect the environment today.
Plastic doesn't look disturbing, right? But in reality, it does. Based on the research finding, it shows that during the pandemic, most of the companies received a high demand in their production, and they choose to use the new plastic rather than recycled one to save costs. And most of the product is one use only. During the manufacturing, it requires a lot of energy which can contribute to the greenhouse gas emission that leads to the global warming.
COVID-19 pandemic is the main reason for high demand of medical supplies. Studies estimated about 129 billion of face masks are used every month. Medical supplies are mostly being one-time use and disposed of after the usage, and it will end up in the ocean. It can lead to water pollution. As water becomes a scarcer resource, we need to treat this increasingly polluted water to make it usable. This process requires a lot of energy and could lead to more emission. Next, PPE disposal waste for each country is different. Some local government do open burning if there is no incinerator. The process produces greenhouse gases that contribute to global warming.
And for our final research finding, we have concluded that there are less recycling activities during the pandemic. Okay. This is due to the movement restrictions that is caused by lockdown uh, orders issued by countries all around the world. So, due to that movement restriction, people cannot go outside of their homes, people cannot go to work, people cannot go to schools, and most importantly, people cannot go to environmental activities such as recycling. This had led to a very drastic drop in the recycling business as recyclers has reported that their business has shrunken for about 20% in the Europe and 50% in some parts of Asia and a total of 60% in some firms in the US.
All the questions are answered, except the last one. So what can we do to overcome it, Prof?
Based on the online survey, the graph shows that 90% from the respondents agree to the possible solution about their current issues. It means that the community still believe and confident that there is always alternative in reducing the impact during their livelihood. According to the issues about the increasing of the plastic production, we cannot stop them absolutely, but we can reduce the impact by providing less emission when producing plastic by switching to the renewable energy sources that can prevent the greenhouse gas emission and that leads to the global warming. Or we can apply the concept of 5R and apply the green practices in our routine in any possibility to save the environment.
Okay, now we continue with the problem solution for the increase in medical supplies. We need to develop reusable equipment that suits to the healthcare and increase the usage of plastic alternatives such as starch-based biopolymers. Actually, reusable respirators masks and air purifying respirators are available, but they are seldom designed for the healthcare and can be challenging to clean. So, it's our responsibility to choose the better one. Next, we need to minimize unnecessary PPE usage. For example, we can minimize employing runners outside the high-risk areas and minimize the hygiene theatre and conspicuous the PPE used in low-risk areas.
Okay, last but not least, the possible solutions for us to overcome less recycling activities during the pandemic are the first one we can do is to do recycling activities at home rather than waiting for the community to start recycling activities. We can do this by just our initiative. We can recycle things out at our home, such as plastic bottles. We can recycle newspapers and etc. Other than just recycling, we can also apply the other two R's in the 3R concept, which are reduce and reuse. We can reduce our use of single-use plastics, and also we can reuse that plastic to make other stuffs rather than just throwing them away. And last but not least, this possible solution is to spread awareness rather than just doing this by yourself. You can spread awareness for this by talking just to your friends and family, and also you can spread this in social media, so you can get attention to people, so people can follow what are you doing, so people can follow the recycling activities that you will do at home. Therefore, that will curb the problem of less recycling activities.
Thanks to all our genius professors. I hope you all take the action, and together we will put the better tomorrow and good environment. But actually, do you think COVID-19 is the real reason for this climate crisis, or is it because our development? Think about it. So that's it. Bye and assalamualaikum.
What a brilliant video presentation by Sekolah Berasrama Penuh Integrasi Jempol. However, I'm sure the audience must have a lot of questions for the presenters. Do not let your curious minds stay silent and please leave your questions in the chat box. Welcome back to the judges to the studio. Looks like we have our first question from user Aina Shafia binti Yasin. What do you think about closing of factories due to the MCO? Do you think it can help reduce pollution? Our presenters, please help clear the air.
Okay, so what do I think about closing the factories due to the MCO? The first thing is that we cannot close the factories completely because factories supply a lot of stuff for our daily needs. So rather than the closing of factories, we think that it is better for us to apply a better alternative in energy production, such as renewable energy, to these factories, and that will also help. That can also help reduce the pollution that we suffer today.
Thank you for the crystal clear explanation. Let us now move on to our second question from the audience. From user Zahra Khalil, we have a question. Do you think our current PPE can be replaced with reusable PPE? Can the presenters please take the question?
Thank you for the question. So yes, we do think our current PPE can be replaced with the reusable PPE. It is because the reusable PPE are already invented, so it is our responsibility to take the action to buy the reusable PPE instead of our current PPE that need to be disposed after one use.
Intelligent remarks, presenter. Now, let us move on with inviting one of the judges to pose a few questions to the presenters.
Okay, this is Miss Haila. I have a question. All right. Okay, your research involves the public, right? So, who were your respondents and how did you reach out to them? Any one of you can answer. I'll repeat the question. Okay, you mentioned that your research involves the public. Okay, so I'd like to know who your respondents were and how you reached out to them.
Okay. Our respondents from the public includes people like students and also adults, and also people that work in the front lines, such as the riders, the doctors that work at the hospitals. We ask them, and how do we reach them? We basically make a Google form. We make a Google form and we share the link with our press, and we ask for them to share the link with their family and also encourage them to share the link publicly.
Right, thank you.
As we still have remaining time for the Q&A session, why don't we have another judge to pose a few questions to the presenters?
Hi, good morning. My question is, personally for you, what have you learned from this experience? Like you mentioned, this experience of conducting the research using the Google form and so on. What have you personally learned? How has this experience helped you? Can any one of you answer?
Thank you for the question. So we did really enjoy doing this research because we do learn a lot and we somehow concerned about our Earth right now, the condition of our Earth, and also we learn how to communicate using this online things. And also we reach a lot of people using the Google form, and it gives us a lot of experience, and we really grateful for having this opportunity to try out this kind of research. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We very much appreciate the feedback given from our presenters. Thank you to the judges and thank you to the presenters, Aiman Hakimi bin Muhammad Abdul Rahman and Farah Nur Alia binti Khairul Saleh, for being with us today in the studio representing Sekolah Beracara Penuh Integrasi Jempol.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to share an interesting fact about FRSIS. FRSIS, or Fully Residential Schools International Symposium, is closely based around the idea of producing effective leaders who are aware of current issues. Not only that, the subtheme are also related to Sustainable Development Goals outlined by the United Nations. There are 17 SDGs in total, but this track specifically focuses on the 9th SDG, being on the topic of industry, innovation, and infrastructure.
Thank you, Atira, for the information. Now, let us move on to our second team for today. From Sekolah Menengah Sains Kuching Utara, we have presenters Alisha Farhana and Trisha Jasmine Anak Janarius to present their research video entitled Linking Climate Crisis to the COVID-19 Pandemic and Adopting Authoritative Solution as Containment Method. Welcome presenters to the studio. Looks like presenters are not yet here. Looks like one of our presenters is not yet here. Let us spare a moment to wait for the other presenter. Things about FRSIS. For your information, this year's FRSIS has received participation from countries such as India, Thailand, Turkey, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Philippines. This year, a total of 105 international participants have come together in this auspicious event. In addition, the total number of participants is around 470 students, comprising all 70 fully residential schools nationwide. To name a few, there are participants from Sekolah Tuanku Abdul Rahman, Sekolah Menengah Sains Muri, the Malay College Kuala Kangsar, Sekolah Menengah Sains Jeli, and the Royal Military College. Now let us proceed with your video presentation from Sekolah Menengah Sains Kuching Utara, Linking Climate Crisis to the COVID-19 Pandemic and Adopting Authoritative Solution as Containment Method.
Good day, everyone. First and foremost, are you aware that the climate crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic are in some way intertwined?
Looks like we are having a little technical glitches. Let us wait a moment or two until the video is
Good day, everyone. First and foremost, are you aware that the climate crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic are in some way intertwined? When the pandemic first began and the world was put on lockdown, our environment was healed. Well, initially. However, as we became more reliant on protective gears such as masks, we began to accumulate non-biodegradable waste, exacerbating the climate crisis caused by the plastic waste pollution. Today's presentation will center on how authorities play a role in addressing the climate as a whole. Based on our understanding and extensive research, we conclude that authorities play a significant role and are in a position to confront climate change with their power. Our general concept revolves around three things: the implementation of a carbon tax, the organization of a campaign on eco-friendly everyday items, and the investment in renewable energy. Our team conducted a survey to gather public feedback on the subject. The authorities have the veto power to contain the climate crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, according to 92.1% of our respondents. Furthermore, 94.5% of respondents agreed that it is most effective when authorities take action on the containment process for this issue. Our presentation today will be subdivided into three sections. Jacinta Nurin will first emphasize on the implementation of carbon tax. Tusha Jasmine will then elaborate on campaign organization, and Alisha Farhana will focus on renewable energy investment.
Scientists agree that the amount of carbon we emit is a major contributor to climate change. Carbon-emitting activities are relatively cheap these days because people do not consider the causes of the emissions which is being imposed on others, including future generations. Carbon tax will force industrialists to consider the full range of consequences of emissions caused by them. The carbon tax works by charging a fee for each ton of carbon dioxide emitted into the atmosphere. An industry that manufactures face masks and hand sanitizer bottles, for example, will now be required to pay that price for its carbon dioxide emissions. If companies with small environmental footprints receive more bailout money than those with large environmental footprints, many businesses would look for ways to reduce emissions and even invest in zero carbon technologies to avoid future carbon tax. Meanwhile, to avoid paying the tax, consumers will have an incentive to reduce their consumption by using reusable face masks and biodegradable hand sanitizer bottles. Authorities can make this a phase-in approach to give industries time to respond. The carbon tax can increase yearly, which means if it is extremely high in the next 5 years, only companies that do not act today will suffer that. As per a survey we conducted, 4.9% of our respondents disagreed on the implementation of carbon tax, believing that it is a cash grab that will only increase the burden on Malaysian citizens, particularly those in the lower income categories. This is where the benefit of a revenue-neutral carbon tax comes into play. Based on an article titled "Why We Support a Revenue-Neutral Carbon Tax" written by George Schultz and Gary Becker, it is said that revenue neutrality means that it will not have fiscal drag on economic growth. The revenue generated by the carbon tax can be collected in a large bucket of money and then distributed evenly among Malaysian households, providing everyone with a carbon check every month and compensating for the additional costs that must be borne. Individuals who choose zero carbon energy do not have to pay for the carbon tax and benefit from the carbon check. As a result, demand for eco-friendly technologies will increase and more new low-carbon technologies will emerge. We are convinced that only the authorities have the authority to veto the implementation of a carbon tax. One thing to remember about healing our environment is that it never works right away. If we truly want a better future for our grandchildren, we must be open, patient, and supportive.
Quoting Patricio Silva, year 2031, it is said that personal protection equipment such as masks, gloves, and face shield are in high demand as a result of COVID-19. PPE, as we all know, is made of non-woven synthetic polymers that contains plastics. It can take hundreds to thousands of years for such materials to decompose. In the meantime, the plastics break down into smaller and smaller pieces known as microplastics. As a result, our team has agreed that launching a campaign to promote eco-friendly everyday items is one of the best ways to address this crisis. Not to mention, according to our survey, 48.1% of our respondents believe that launching of this campaign by the authorities to promote eco-friendly everyday items is the best alternative to help the environment. For your information, quoting Priscilla Green, year 2019, it is said that an eco-friendly product is one that is less harmful to the environment than its conventional counterpart. More people purchasing eco-friendly products will reduce pollution and, most importantly, our planet will have a chance to breathe and regenerate. Furthermore, our families and community will be healthier in the long run. A campaign on eco-friendly everyday items will engage members of the public and elevate awareness of the importance of using eco-friendly items in their daily lives. In some ways, it parallels the government's vision of ensuring a healthy society and engaging society with one another. This alternative will significantly reduce the problem of pollution caused by plastics. Moreover, running a campaign is one of the most cost-effective methods. Eco-friendly items are built to last. A long-lasting product is one that can be used many times before it breaks down and ends up in a landfill. In today's world, the planet requires our assistance. Our waste of resources has put the planet in jeopardy, and only we can avert the crisis. Everyone can help to save the planet by using environmentally friendly products. It is critical that our daily decisions have a positive impact on the planet in order to preserve the beauty, resources, and habitat of our planet. This is where environmentally products comes in. It is beneficial to both families and environment. Eco-friendly products give customers the option of prioritizing responsibility over frivolity. Eco-friendly products are both good for the environment and safer for consumers, especially during this pandemic. So, how can this campaign be successful? We truly believe that the authorities have the ability to organize such large-scale campaigns. Well, the result may not be immediate, but with perseverance, we can become accustomed to the norms of choosing eco-friendly everyday items.
Next, we will be moving on to investments in renewable energy. The ultimate goal is to make sure almost everyone is able to access towards renewable energy. But what are the problems that lie behind this? Number one is a lot of renewable energy is very cost prohibitive, which means not everyone can access to renewable energy, particularly for those who live in the third class or the lower parts of the second class. Access to renewable energy is a luxury. Number two is from large hotels to small thrift shops, non-renewable energy is used for electricity because there is no other options other than what is already supplied by authorities. The idea is to use proceeds from the carbon tax policy to fund investments in renewable energy. The role of authorities is to implement the carbon tax policy and to ensure the proceeds from the tax is used solely for green energy. So what can the investments in renewable energy lead to? Number one, it could lead to more inventions of renewable energy or technology, resulting in more job opportunities, particularly for those who are affected by this pandemic. Number two, the global market's shift will favor renewable energy over non-renewable energy. As a result of the global market's competitiveness, cost of renewable energy will be reduced. As cost decreases, people of all socio-economic backgrounds will have greater access towards renewable energy. It could also lead to less reliance on non-renewable energy. The society will rely more onto renewable energy sources. This will have a significant impact. Renewable energy could account up to 4/5 of the global electricity supply by the year 2050, significantly reducing the amounts of carbon emission. And last but not least, the government can transition from non-renewable energy to renewable energy.
And with that, our presentation comes to a conclusion. But first, let me quickly summarize the main points or takeaways. We believe that this is how we will implement it and how we believe authorities can make a difference in climate change, particularly during this pandemic. Here's a diagram that summarizes our findings. Additionally, authorities working together around the globe could result in substantial beneficial changes to the climate crisis. After all, they have the legal authority to impose it on us. It's all for a worthwhile purpose. It's all from us. We appreciate your time and consideration.
Wow, I'm sure we are all amazed by the excellent video presentation from Sekolah Menengah Sains Kuching Utara. Such an interesting topic must leave some of you wondering as to how, what, and why. Clear your heads and insert your question in the live chat. There we have it from user Raja N. The inquiry reads as, eco-friendly products are usually expensive. What is your suggestion to this matter? Before that, I'd like to invite our judges in the studio. Welcome, judges. Our presenters, can you please help answer this question?
Thank you for the question. And in my opinion, yeah, the eco-friendly products are usually expensive, but in order to overcome this problem, the government can help to give us a rebate. So it will give us a rebate for every purchasement of eco-friendly products.
Great, thank you for the clear explanation. Moving on, there seems to be an inquiry from user Akila Azlan. They ask, is climate change capable of affecting our future? Our presenters, please help clear the air.
All right, thank you. Right, so in my opinion, I do believe that climate change is capable of affecting our future. The thing is right now is whether it will affect it negatively or positively, and that is the change that we're fighting for today.
Thank you for the brief explanation. Now, I'd like to invite our judges to pose any question to the presenters or even comment to the presenters' video research.
All right, good morning, everyone. All right, my question would be, do you think that the research that you have done for this presentation will benefit you in the future? You get my question? Or you need me to repeat?
Thank you for the Okay, in my opinion, I think our research for this topic will really help us in the future, because most of the solutions we put in this video it will cause a long run effect.
Thank you,
A long run effect. A long run effect. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
A long run effect, like the solutions we provided, they will last. The effect of the solution will last in the long term. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. It will last longer than other solution.
All right, thank you.
Okay, good morning. I have one question. Okay, your focus is what the authorities can do, correct? Right? So as teenagers, what can you do to ensure the success of the government's endeavors? Would you like me to repeat?
Yes, please.
Yes, okay. Your focus of research is what the authorities can do, right? Right. Now, as teenagers, what can you do to ensure the success of the government's endeavors?
Okay, thank you. Right. So there are a few things that I believe teenagers play a role in our research. Number one is where the teenagers do abide by whatever policy is implemented by the government, because we believe that these policies could actually help. And secondly is, of course, because teenagers have like a vision for the future, and sometimes teenagers even do have suggestions that could be great for the environment. So teenagers should use their platform like social media to speak up so that it could reach the government, where the government could implement the thoughts of young minds in this case.
Thank you.
Thank you, presenters. Thank you to the judges for posing such interesting questions. I'm sorry to be the one stopping this fun Q&A session. Unfortunately, time is up. Thank you to the presenters from Sekolah Menengah Sains Kuching Utara for such clear explanation.
Now, let us take a short pause from all the presentations, shall we? With the sudden rise of the COVID-19 pandemic, industries everywhere have been hit and forced to shift to the virtual world. Following the 9th SDG's mission statement, which is to build resilient infrastructure, promote industrialization, and foster innovation. We're encouraging students to realize the problems society has to face and how innovation and technology affects them, for the better or for the worse, and to have them think outside the box and create possible solutions for a better future. That is all for my sharing.
Thank you, Alia. Now, I'd like to invite Muhammad Muaz bin Hamdi and Ili Ilham bin Muhammad Hafizi from Sekolah Menengah Agama Persekutuan Kajang to present their video presentation entitled A Flower Blooming in an Unlikely Desert, Finding Comfort in Nature During a Pandemic. Welcome presenters to the studio.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good day to the honorable judges and fellow friends. Today, we, the Smart Kajang FRSIS team, will be sharing with you the findings of research that we have conducted in our school, which is a flower blooming in an unlikely desert, finding comfort in nature during a pandemic. This topic is chosen as we can see the relevance to our sub-theme Climate Crisis and Change during the pandemic, the promise of a better tomorrow. The methodology chosen for this research is that we have conducted a survey among 150 students in our school, carried out interviews to discover how they perceive nature in the pandemic circumstances, as well as having extensive internet research to validate our findings. The statement of the problem at hand now is what could be the motivations and reasoning behind the determination to preserve the environment, as well as how it is utilized as a tool of unification in these trying times. This is especially important as the current teen generation may feel helpless and disconnected to the climate crisis when they are actually dealing with a bigger issue, that is pandemic uncertainty. So, we tried to figure out how can this happen based on Smart Kajang students' opinions. To gain some insight on the status quo, Hasha will share more on that.
Thanks, Muaz. A pleasant day to all. Today, we as a team will be shedding light on a topic that is imperative in our current lives, which is what are the roles of teenagers in combating the climate crisis. Teenagers need to have a clear direction in understanding the roles of preserving nature for a better tomorrow. In 2017, a report from the American Psychological Association included a new word, eco-anxiety, which the APA defined as a chronic fear of environmental doom. And surprise! The biggest number of people who have been diagnosed with this specific kind of anxiety are teenagers. This was further strengthened by a research done by Consolo and Alice in their 2018 paper. To be a teenager at this moment is definitely a lot. You're supposed to be planning for your future at a time when it's scary to imagine what that future will be. Models that predict the world-changing sea level rise and droughts and wildfire and ocean acidification tend to use dates that feel very real to you. Other generation like those facing a wartime drought. But it's a unique experience to know that every day the world is generating emission that will disrupt the basic workings of planet Earth. It makes you feel negative and resentful and angry, as ascertained by a report by Hamel et al. 2019. Add the pandemic into the mix. We then have a ticking anxiety bomb in our hands. To see what Smart Kids students have in mind regarding climate crisis during this pandemic age, let's listen to what Safia has to say.
Thanks, Hasha. Hi all, I'm Safia. I will uncover two main motivations behind our determination to preserve the environment. Firstly, Smart Kajang students have shared their views on the importance of increasing awareness on climate crisis and how it in fact provides them comfort during the pandemic. For many SmartK students, they perceive that the relatively better air quality and slowed down pace of life has allowed nature to bloom again. In other words, it felt good to see the forest becoming green again, the lakes returning to its crystal clear state, and animals roaming around freely in deserted cities. According to Henry, Chen and Jacoby 2021, business closures, travel restrictions, and more experience of working and learning from home as responses to COVID-19 have caused sharp reductions in economic activity and associated fossil fuel consumption around the world. As a result, many nations are reporting significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions for the year 2020. When SmartK students were asked how they feel about lesser carbon emissions and cleaner air as a result of lockdown, up to 75% respondents responded that they feel relieved. When we conducted interviews to get more clarifications about this, about 8 students mentioned that knowing the environment is getting better when we're mired in rising coronavirus infection has lessened their anxiety. During these interview sessions as well, respondents shared with the researchers that they have read articles and news on the positive changes experienced by the natural environment in the past year as form of mind relaxation. This has served as a steady motivation for them to remain engaged in climate crisis issue even when there is a raging pandemic. Besides being a source of relaxation and positivity, being involved in climate crisis issues and its awareness is seen as an empowering experience and sensation. A substantial number of students, about 68% respondents, also suggested that they believe that their generation can bring a difference into the climate crisis even during the pandemic situation, while 72% believe that the environment should not take a backseat even during the pandemic. When interviewed further on why do they follow young environmentalists on social media, many have shared names like Jamie Margolin and her Zero Movement and the Times 2020 Person of the Year, Greta Thunberg as reassuring young icons who share achievable ways to be green and prove that youth can make a difference if given a chance. For many young people, environmental activism begins within their families or close friends, as suggested by Williams et al. 2017 and Lawson et al. 2019. For instance, young people start conversations among family and friends after learning about environmental issues in classrooms. Beyond these initial conversations, young people participate in formal activism events such as attending online campaigns before taking on leadership roles within organizations and communities as noticed by Echen in 2018. Evidence suggests that adults hold positive perceptions of youth roles in formal political spheres and that youth influence their parents' views on controversial issues through intergenerational learning, as proposed Duval and Zinn 2007. So perhaps the respondents in SmartK is really a reflection of the youth around the world as they believe they can influence change amongst their family members, and 68% of them want more emphasis on climate crisis across the subjects in school. Hence, it is clear that the two main motivations for SmartK students to combat climate crisis even during a pandemic are: firstly, it is proven method to increase one's faith in earth restoration, and secondly, it provides a sense of empowerment to them. But to see how SmartK students would propose a viable change would be quite interesting. And for that, let's listen to Ili Ilham.
Awesome work, Safia. Now I, Ili Ilham, am going to share how can we make a tangible change in our small communities which will eventually sprout into a national movement if done right. A whopping 93% of Smart Kajang respondents believe that these small changes are best manifested by engaging in gardening and community farming. This is especially interesting, as noted by Halliday, Dublin, and Van Huysen in 2019, Urban and Pre-Urban Agriculture is considered as a strategy that can bring multiple benefits and help to build resilient defenses against climate crisis. Communities, especially in cities, do have an important role to play in climate change mitigation and adaptation. Besides reducing food miles by producing fresh food close to urban markets, community farming in urban areas also enhances rainwater infiltration, reduces the heat island effect by increasing the surface of green areas, and finally provides better diets, urban food, securities, job, and income. A few interviewed students have kindly shared pictures of their farm communities where neighbors observed strict SOPs and cultivated open lands around their home to grow various vegetables. Another interviewed student said, and I quote, "I believe every school must have our own farms once we return to school so that we all learn to surround ourselves with environment all the time." For most of the respondents, being in lockdown has instilled a keener sense of awareness and love for the environment. In a few news reports found in Malaysia recently as well, there are various urban farming projects that are introduced to allow the homeless people generate incomes, and we see this as double-pronged to combat climate crisis in an effective yet achievable way. So what started as a pandemic-era project is actually one of the most viable solutions and perhaps the way forward that we could all adopt. The research team was very ecstatic to have discovered that climate crisis is indeed a cause close to smart K students' heart even during the pandemic and have found a way to overcome it. However small the first step may be, in other words, they have found a flower blooming in an unlikely desert by finding comfort in nature during a pandemic. With that said, that's all from us. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
An outstanding video research from Sekolah Menengah Agama Persekutuan Kajang. To the audience, do not hesitate to ask any questions and type it out into the live chat. We are sure the presenters are glad to answer them. Now let us re-invite the judges to the studio. Looks like we have our first question from user Ainin Sofia Shasha. Since nowadays, people are busy by preventing the spread of COVID-19, do you think it's okay to not care much about environmental issues? Presenters, please answer the question.
In my opinion, there's a time that we can ignore the environmental issues, and there's a time that we can focus on other stuff instead of that environmental issue. Let me give an example, such as we don't have to do like campaigns to affect the environment. We can do like simple stuff, like we can do a side hobby or a side project, such as in the video they say pre-urban or urban agriculture. So we can just plant like simple plantations in our backyards. So in other way, we can actually contribute to the environmental positively in simple ways, other than just like really think about the environmental issues. Thank you.
Thank you, presenter. Moving on, there seems to be an inquiry from user Amna. She asks, do you think teenagers play a big role in preserving the environment? Why? Can our presenters kindly answer?
Okay, thank you for the question, Amna. I think teenagers actually play a really big role in preserving the environment. In preserving the environment. Why? Because the teenager is the future for our country, and the teenager is the future for our world. So, if the teenagers are corrupted or don't know how to actually handle our environment really well, this will eventually lead to our own demise, because managing the environment is not an easy work, because we have to take consider other factors. So if our generation, the teenagers nowadays, don't know how to combat that problem, this will actually do us more harm than more goods. That's my answer.
Thank you for the great feedback from the presenters. Now I'd like to invite our judges to pose any questions or even comment to the presenters' video researches.
Hi, good morning. I think you've done a very interesting piece of research. Okay, I found it very interesting. So I'd just like to find out from you personally, what have you done during the pandemic, right? What is your role in preserving the environment? Any little project or anything that you did at home or in your school? Anyone of you?
Thank you for the question, Judge. I think I actually have done a lot because in my school, because the pandemic started like a year ago. So in my school, like when I was Form 3 last year, my class actually started planting some plants in the schoolyard. So we planted like a lot of plants. We planted like chilies. We planted cabbages. So I think that actually affect the environment positively. And in this year, my family and I actually, because we have a pretty large backyard, so my uncles, because I live in my grandpa's house, my uncles and me included, actually started planting a lot of plants as well in our backyard. Like I think it was the start of the year when we planned it out, and we started actually planting the plants at around March. So I can say the only thing that I actually did that can affect the environment positively is I have done a lot of plantations.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Good job.
Unfortunately, we are out with the 5 minutes of the Q&A session. Thank you once again to all the judges and to the presenters, Ili Ilham bin Muhammad Hafizi and Muhammad Muaz bin Hamdi, for being with us in the studio and sharing your video presentation.
You're very welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, just to let you know, the first ever FRSIS was hosted by Sekolah Tun Fatimah in 2011 with the theme Students, a Catalyst of Change for a Better Tomorrow. Ever since its first inception in 2011, FRSIS has been held for a total of 8 times, making this year FRSIS being the 9th one held, and this is the first time it is held online. The last FRSIS held was hosted by Sekolah Berasrama Penuh Integrasi Gompa in 2019. The theme was Smart Industry, Reforming the World. During the closing ceremony, the Putri Kencana dance group from Sekolah Seri Puteri gracefully performed, indicating that Sekolah Seri Puteri were to be the next host school for FRSIS.
That is interesting, Atira. Now, without wasting any time, let us invite the next team from Sekolah Menengah Sains Tapa and their presenters Atira Nur Sofia and Irdina Sofia to the studio and have them present their research video entitled Will the Public Awareness on Climate Change During the Pandemic Determine a Better Future? Welcome presenters to the studio.
Fire burning about an hour out of Canberra have been told it's too late to leave their properties.
China, where a cleanup operation is underway.
Arctic polar bears are facing.
Climate change has been a quite common topic for years, but do we know specifically how this issue happens and how serious it impacts us? Looking at our situation at this moment of time, along with the pandemic that is still happening, does it affect climate change? More importantly, is just by being aware of the situation itself enough? Due to the long period of time, climate change that once started as a serious issue slowly become a joke for some people. Some said, if you meet a woman, start talking about global warming. It's a real icebreaker. Some even said, what did the one tornado say to the other? Let's twist again that we did last summer. Apart from all of this so-called hilarious goofiness, it's time to see with your own eyes that this climate change will not be reducing anytime soon. In fact, it has become a life and death situation. Even David King had once said, climate change is the most severe problem that we are facing today, more serious even than the threat of terrorism. Moreover, the pandemic that had started in 2019 also has become one of the contributors towards this matter.
With all of this talking about climate change and so on, you must be scratching your own head and feeling baffled. How can climate change actually relate to the pandemic that we are facing? Is it capable of affecting our future?
Well, it turns out the pandemic has contributed impacts on climate change in either way that can be positive or negative. At the start of the global pandemic, despite all the health or economic complications that we were facing, there seemed to be positive impacts on the environment. With more than 1 million coronavirus cases confirmed worldwide, lockdowns had been enforced in various countries and territories around the world. By April 2020, the whole world adopted the curfew or lockdown activity with restrictions on human mobility. More than 3.9 billion people in more than 90 countries have been asked or ordered to stay at home by their governments. The imposition of lockdowns leads to the unprecedented reduction of anthropogenic activities that have caused extreme harm to our environment through all the years. With regards to this, lockdown events help to decline in greenhouse gas emission that has become the main contributor towards air pollution. Despite all the positive impacts on nature that we are gaining, other pollutants began causing harm to the environment. Because of this dreadful virus, all of the people globally were required to wear personal protection equipment, PPE, that has become almost a must for every single frontliners to wear. Throughout the year, PPEs have been used with no slowing in sight, which causes mass pollution. How can these equipments cause pollution?
Most PPE is made up of non-woven synthetic polymers such as polyethylene, polypropylene, polyethylene terephthalate, all of which contain plastic. I'm sure every single one of us is aware of what plastics can do to our environment. Such plastics takes hundreds or maybe thousands of years to decompose, which can certainly lead to all we know, land or perhaps water pollution. Do you also know that during the pandemic, there has also been an increase in the usage of single-use plastics worldwide? With the fear of contamination, lots of shops or institutions refuse to use reusable materials. Not to forget, even several US states have stopped recycling programs. You must be wondering, why? Is putting a pause in recycling programs really necessary? The pandemic has become the global utmost priority. So, in order to prevent virus outbreaks, it is necessary due to the concern that the reusable materials have not been sanitized and handled properly. A pause in these programs could potentially harm the global momentum towards better recycling programs that maybe could help prevent climate change better. It would act as a reset button for all of us.
This is when people's awareness comes in handy in order to help to decline climate change. Individuals with awareness about this issue know what will happen to us if this climate change keeps on going even during the pandemic. Those who are aware are not heavily dependent on nature-based programs such as recycling programs, Plastic-Free July, World Car Free Day, all of which can contribute to the reduction of climate change. Easy to say when you are aware of a situation and you know that it will cause harm to you, what will you do then? I am certainly sure that you will do whatever you can to prevent it. Without any exception, this also applies to climate change. When someone is fully conscious of all the negative effects that are caused by the climate crisis, the awareness itself will drive oneself to prevent the issue with their own will. Other than that, we are also strongly convinced that this pandemic can be a good preview for what is to come in the future. I am sure a lot of people there are making a fuss about how this pandemic has affected every single one of us, no matter what, in terms of economic, health, social, and environment. But what if you throw those negative thoughts away for once? Look at the brighter side of it. What have we learned from the pandemic? What are the lessons that we have gained because of this pandemic? Ladies and gentlemen, when we think of it, yes, there are certainly some implications from this pandemic. This pandemic has taught us to be innovative and adapt to change. How? Isn't it related to robots and technology stuff?
Well, innovation holds a very wide meaning. Innovation is the creation, development, and implementation of a new thing with the aim of improving efficiency and effectiveness. In this case, governments have discovered ways in order to avoid COVID-19 outbursts by enforcing lockdowns. Other than that, the new norm of wearing masks every time we go out is also an innovative way for us to prevent the virus. During the pandemic, these are the changes that were required for us to adapt in order to avoid any outbreaks that are caused by this virus. Believe it or not, these criteria can actually help us to face the climate crisis that day by day has not showing any signs of stopping. If we are aware of what climate change holds for us, we will notice the similarities between the pandemic and the crisis. Into the bargain, we can actually turn the tragedy of COVID-19 into a blueprint in order to avoid climate change. Like once stated before, just like how we faced the pandemic, those who are aware will take it as an implementation, be innovative, and apply it to the climate crisis.
We believe that our world can salvage a huge opportunity from this crisis that is only possible, though, if we do not attempt to rebuild the old normal with all the free structures of the past. Instead, we have to turn the post-pandemic recovery into a reset and make it the blueprint for a sustainable future. This pandemic is a wake-up call to stay within our planet's limits. Over the last 2 decades, experts have been warning that biodiversity loss and the disruption of ecosystems can create conditions for new viruses and diseases to emerge. Global temperature rise alters the timing, geography, and intensity of disease around the world and could help to facilitate the rise of new disease outbreaks like COVID-19. The Earth is a living organism. It can also respond to signal and input much like humans. But now it seems like the planet is telling us that it needs rest.
Based on a survey that we had done to assess the degree of awareness among Sekolah Menengah Sains Tapan residents, we had come across that the majority of them are sensible and aware of this crisis. But the real question is, how do we maintain this momentum of awareness for the sake of a better future?
We need more people talking about climate change more often because we need to break out of the current climate echo chamber. Our primary task is not to tell people climate change is happening or to make them worry about it. They already know and they are already concerned.
Earth Day is meant to be spent celebrating the planet's clean natural resources. In recent years, the day has been used to raise awareness about global climate change. Nature is in crisis, threatened by biodiversity and habitat loss, global heating, and toxic pollution. Failure to act is failing humanity. Addressing the current pandemic and protecting ourselves against future global threats requires sound management of hazardous medical and chemical waste, strong and global stewardship of nature and biodiversity, and a clear commitment to building back better, creating green jobs and facilitating the transition to carbon-neutral economies. Humanity depends on action now for a resilient and sustainable future. Now is the right time to demonstrate solidarity, take action so that a clear message could be sent to the world leaders to act on climate change, halt biodiversity and habitat loss, and make certain environmental protection is the fundamental foundation of building back better.
By now, I'm sure most of us are sensible and most likely to be aware of this issue. At this moment in time, climate change is already creating a never-ending story to the natural disasters that occur around us globally. Research and data has also been done in order to substantiate this statement. Put aside all the research, even we ourselves know and are conscious of the change that is happening in our surroundings. No matter where we heard about it, news, radios, or even social media, lots of natural disasters have been reported due to climate change itself. So, what are we waiting for? There is no way for us to be sitting in the comfort of our bed, eating chips, while at the same time, we know our earth is sickening, yet we decided to do nothing and ignore this matter. Our team believes that all human beings from all walks of life should participate in taking actions to preserve our earth, just like how the COVID-19 crisis had taught us. Be innovative and adapt to change. Say no more to only being dependent on governments or organizations, waiting for them to take action while we ourselves can actually prevent this issue even with the smallest action. Like a great woman named Susan Cooper once said, in the end, all it takes is one small action by one person, one at a time.
Thank you so much to Sekolah Menengah Sains Tapa for an exceptional video presentation. Hopefully, the viewers gain new insight today. To resume with our event, let us have the audience to ask a few questions in the chat box. And welcome again to our judges for today. There is an inquiry from user Raja N. She asked, do you think it's possible to do car-free day in Malaysia? What is your opinion about this matter? Can our presenters kindly answer?
I'd like to take the question. So, thank you, user Raja N, for the question. So the question is, do you think it is possible to do a car-free day in Malaysia, and what is our opinion about this matter? So we do think that it is possible to do car-free day in Malaysia. In our opinion, in Malaysia, we have a lot of public transportation such as buses and trains and so on. So it is possible to do this car-free day, and people can use the public transportation instead of cars in that day. So that's all.
Thank you for the great explanation, presenter. Moving on from user Amna, she asked, what material do you think is the most suitable to replace plastic for the making of PPE? Presenters, please help clear the air.
Okay, may I take this question?
Yes.
I think the most suitable material to replace plastic in PPE is the biodegradable plastic, which is actually useful because plastic takes thousands of years, and I think biodegradable plastic is actually the only suitable material because it can compose easily, even though it takes times, but it still is much more faster to decompose rather than the plastic material.
Thank you for the feedback. We are sure the viewers are happy with the given answers. Since there are no more questions from the audience, I'd like to invite the judges to pose any questions to the presenters.
Okay, good morning, everyone. All right. My question would be, as a teenager, what can you do to prevent the issues that you have mentioned in your presentations just now?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
As a teenager, what can you do to help prevent the issues or to cope with the issues that you have mentioned in your presentation just now?
I'll take the question. So as we know, teenagers are the future generation. So it is important for them to take action in order to prevent the climate change. So what we can do is we can maybe spread this awareness through social medias, because as we know, teenagers and mostly majority of people nowadays use social media. So I think that's the best platform that we can do. And other than that, we can also do probably in school. We can ask our school to do competitions that are based on nature, based on climate change, and spreading awareness about climate change, because as we know, teenagers and kids, probably kids, they love to interact, they love to learn from something that is fun. So probably we can expose them with climate change by doing this kind of competition so that they can learn something from it. So that's all from me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you to the judges for posing an interesting question to the presenters. I never want this question and answer session to end. However, we need to make room for the next presentation. Thank you very much for the question and lengthy answers from Sekolah Menengah Sains Tapa. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure Alea has an interesting fact about FRSIS.
As we know, the best way to prevent and slow down transmission is to be well informed about the disease and how the virus spreads. Protect yourself and others from infection by staying at least 1 meter apart from others, wearing a properly fitted mask, and washing your hands or using an alcohol-based scrub frequently. Get vaccinated when it's your turn and follow local guidance. That is my tip from today.
Thank you, Alea. Last but not least, I'd like to invite Afifa Ainun Rohmana and Luzvida Alfa Shabrina Rubiarno from Sekolah Menengah Atas Negeri 1 Purworejo from Indonesia to present their video presentation entitled The Effects of Activities Restrictions During COVID-19 Pandemic on Air Quality Changes. Welcome, presenters.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and also our beloved friends. Welcome to our presentation. In this presentation, we would like to discuss about the effects of COVID-19 lockdown on air quality. But first, let me introduce my team. I'm Afifa, and there are my partners Amelia, Andin, and Ludvida, and our supervising teacher is Mrs. Arvina. We are from SMA Negeri 1 Purworejo, Indonesia. On March 11, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 outbreak a pandemic. This pandemic caused the governments all around the world to introduce lockdown in early 2020, temporarily closing schools and any public spaces as well as restricting mobilities. As economic activity slowed, so did the emissions of air pollutants. That's why we're conducting research about the effects of COVID-19 lockdown on air quality. Then, we finally formulated the problems of our research are: first, what are the causes of air quality change? Second, what are the differences between the air quality before and during the pandemic? And third, does the air quality change have impacts on humans? We conducted a survey using Google Form, which contains several questions based on conditions during the pandemic to several respondents in several countries. We also carried out an observation on AQI and PM2.5 to make sure that the air quality had been increased. Then, we analyzed the data, and these are the results. The result of our research. First, what are the causes of the air quality change? To control the spread of COVID-19, most cities implemented activity restriction policies. School and shops closed, people should work from home, air travel was banned, and some cities saw full lockdowns. These measures significantly affect the pollution emissions and improve the air quality. Second, the differences between the air quality before and during the pandemic. We found that Paris came in with a PM2.5 reading of 14.7 micrograms per cubic meter. Compared to 2019, the AQI was decreased by 44% and the concentration of PM2.5 was decreased by 45%. Moving on to Dhaka, in 2019, Dhaka came in with a PM2.5 reading of 83.3 micrograms per cubic meter as the yearly average, putting it in the unhealthy bracket of air quality. Among the countries studied, Dhaka sees the largest emission reduction by 72%. At the same time, Hanoi ranked amongst the top 15 most polluted cities in Southeast Asia with an AQI of 129. The analysis showed that the AQI improved by 32%, while the PM2.5 concentration decreased by 44%. Meanwhile, in Thailand, the annual average of PM2.5 reached 22.6 micrograms per cubic meter, and the air pollution was lower in the COVID-19 period, along with a reduced PM2.5 concentration by approximately 56%, and the AQI has also been reduced by about 53%. Next, Davao City came in with an average AQI rating of 86. Lockdown restricted the people movement, which results in a 44% reduction in PM2.5 concentration, while the AQI level reduced by 32%. Last but not least, Jakarta in 2019 came in with a PM 2.5 yearly average of 49.4 micrograms per cubic meter. Jakarta had the highest pollution in the world on 4 June 2019 with an AQI of 210. Due to the coronavirus, Jakarta reported an improvement of AQI and PM 2.5 by 9% and 7%.
The air quality change has an impact on humans. It can make our lungs healthier and clean from air pollution that can increase the risk of lung disease, such as respiratory infections, bronchitis, pneumonia, and cancer. It also brings our mental health to be more positive and healthier. Good air quality can prevent continuous exposure to O3 and PM 2.5 that can cause neurovascular damage, which disorders of the nervous system that can make stress and depressions. Change in air quality make us become a better person with good habits and non-individualist.
Based on the data analysis, indicated that the air pollution was lower in the COVID-19 period, along with the reduced concentrations of PM 2.5. We can conclude that, first, the activity restrictions in response to the COVID-19 pandemic have brought significant impacts on better air quality in many countries. Second, the air quality in many countries rose significantly during the pandemic. Third, this improvement of the air quality brings good impacts on human life physically, psychologically, and socially. However, it is still possible that the air quality will deteriorate again after this pandemic ends. Therefore, we finally came to the recommendation to maintain the air quality condition. First, planting more plants project. We can kill our leisure time by planting and learning more about planting plants, as well as supporting the government programs on green belts among students inside and outside our school. Second, conducting bike to school projects, which allow students to go to school on bike and conduct many cycling events inside the school or may broaden to wider contexts which involve other schools.
Ladies and gentlemen, and also our beloved friends, that's all the thing we present. May all those be beneficial for you all. Finally, thank you for your kind attention and see you!
We are beyond privileged to have ended this session with such an incredible video presentation from Smart One all the way from Indonesia. As usual, if the viewers have any questions or concern, do voice it out in the chat box below. Welcome back to all the judges to the studio. So our first question is from user Siti Eliana. They asked, how serious can this climate change affect us? Can our presenters please answer the question?
Thank you for the question. How serious can this climate change affect us? Climate change is one of our serious problems that we are facing right now. Climate change, especially air pollution, is bad for our future because air is our basic daily life. And when the air pollution was bad, it can irritate our lungs, it can irritate our eyes, and it can risk lung disease, and it can cause the mental health issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the brilliant feedback, presenter. Next up, let us have another question from user Azam Safa, who asked, what have you learned during this research? Can our presenters please help clear the air?
Thank you for the question. By doing this research, we have learned a lot of things from this research. We expanded our knowledge and research skills. We also learned how to solve problems, like we found the solution about the issues we choose, and eventually we improved our critical thinking toward the current situation. Since we are working on a team, it makes us learn deeper about teamwork. Thank you.
Thank you once again for the crystal clear explanation. Let us proceed with the third question for the Q&A session, which is from user Ainin Sofia Shasha, who asked, as a student, how do you divide your time studying and doing the research? Can our presenters please respond to the question?
Thank you for the question, and I will answer the question. At the school time, we always focus with our school lessons, and we did this research after the school time ended. We also spent our weekend to do the research. It was not easy, but we really enjoyed it because we can learn about time management through this. Thank you. Hopefully answer your question.
Thank you, presenters. Now, let us have one of the judges to pose a few questions to the presenters.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I have a question. First, my statement. Okay, I would say the COVID-19 pandemic is God's way of healing our earth, right? Okay, so knowing human nature, do you think that humans have the capacity to really change their habits to improve the air quality permanently? Would you like me to repeat the question? I'll repeat, okay? I would say that COVID-19 pandemic is God's way of healing our earth, right? Okay, knowing human nature, do you think humans have the capacity to really change their habits to improve air quality permanently?
Thank you for the question, and I will answer. Through this research, we made solutions that can make air quality get better and better every day. If we start from ourselves, we sure that we can maintain the air quality still good even this pandemic ends. Such as our project that we planned, back to school project that can change the short drive habit where too many people, especially teenagers, drive short distances to get places that could be reached by walking or biking. We are sure this little thing will bring good impacts for our environment. It's better we do something little from now on for our environment than we do nothing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like we still have remaining time. Why don't the other judges pose a few questions or even comment on the leader presentation?
Yeah, hi, good morning. I was quite interested in the two suggestions that your team proposed as a way to contribute or to help maintain the air quality. So you suggested planting trees and also riding bikes. So I'm just curious, are any one of you adopting these suggestions in your current life now? Or would you know of anyone who's doing it? Do you understand the question?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are up with the 5 minutes of the Q&A session. I'm sorry to interrupt. And now, big round of applause to the presenters from SMINE 1, Indonesia, for all the well-thought answers. We are tempted to continue with the Q&A session, however, time is preventing us from doing so. Thank you to all the judges once again, and thank you to the presenters. Before we adjourn, I would like to remind you once again that there will be an online quiz posted in the chat box at the end of the first session today. The online quiz will be open until tomorrow on Monday at 10 a.m. Make sure to be on the lookout for the quiz.
Before we move on to the next session, we have a culture performance comprising from the 7 participating countries. Let us enjoy the unique performance of each country. Do enjoy the show. Thank you for tuning in. Our next session is at 10:30 a.m.
this evening. The first one is Chindai, followed by Spartacus. But I'd like to introduce their director, the most fashionable director I've seen this afternoon. It's Mr. Raja Muzaffar. Please welcome Raja. This evening. The first one is Chindai, followed by Spartacus. But I'd like to introduce their director, the most fashionable director I've seen this afternoon. It's Mr. Raja Muzaffar. Please welcome Raja.
What a splendid cultural performance from before. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon I wish to the honorable judges, teachers, guests, participants, and all watching today. You're now watching the live streaming of the 9th Online Fully Residential Schools International Symposium of 2021. Welcome back to our audience before and greetings to our new viewers. We are delighted to continue with our second session today.
We would like to inform you that the online quiz has already been posted in the chat box at the end of the first session today. We have different sets of questions for our online quizzes according to the tracks. For information, if you manage to answer 80% of the questions correctly, you will be rewarded with an International Achievement e-certificate. The online quiz will be open until tomorrow, Monday at 10 a.m. Make sure to be on the lookout for the quiz.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue with the presentation today, I would like to reintroduce you to our esteemed judges. Let us welcome the judges to the studio before introducing them. First off, we have the Chief Judge, which is Dr. Anne Rowena David, the Lecturer of University Science Malaysia. The second judge back with us today is Ms. Mastina Wati binti Ahmad from Sekolah Menengah Sains Batu Pahat. And the third and final judge is Ms. Wan Hailah binti Wan Yahya from Sekolah Menengah Sains Muzaffar Shah. My name is Alia Natasha binti Abrari and my co-moderator is Nur Atira Fauzi Abbas, and we are both from Sekolah Seri Puteri Cyberjaya.
Now, let me remind you of the rules. Firstly, the presentation must focus on the sub-theme assigned to each team. In this track, the sub-theme is Climate Crisis and Change During the Pandemic, the Promise of a Better Tomorrow. Secondly, the duration of the video presentation should not be more than 10 minutes. And lastly, a question and answer session will be conducted after each presentation. As planned for today, we will have 15 teams overall to present their research videos. We have watched 5 videos earlier in the previous session, and now we are going to look at the next 5 teams. To start us off, I'd like to invite Hanif bin Firdaus and Arif bin Amir Ali from the Malay College Kuala Kangsar to present their video presentation entitled Climate Crisis and Change During the Pandemic, the Promise of a Better Tomorrow. Welcome, presenters.
IPCC reported that we have less than a decade left until the effects of global warming have become truly irreversible. The moment when global temperatures increase by 2 degrees Celsius, there will be absolutely nothing we can do but reap what we have sown. But how did we get here? Let's backtrack a little bit. Ever since the dawn of industrialization, we humans have been constantly polluting and exploiting whatever resources we can find on this planet. Although we have tremendously improved our lifestyle throughout the years, we have neglected and we have ignored the well-being of our planet, and this trend of pollution doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. But the IPCC isn't the only one harping this idea. There have been countless of NGOs and governmental organizations that have been talking about this issue. It's become as clear as daylight that human influence has become the main driving factor for global warming. And countless statistics have backed that our influence comes with its own dire consequences. Well, before I dive in, I'd like to also clarify that global warming is the long-term heating of Earth's climate since the pre-industrial period, whereas climate change is the long-term changes in weather patterns that define Earth, like temperatures, humidity, and rainfall patterns. Now, let's take a look at the main culprit for Mother Earth's pollution: greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide play big roles in global warming. Since 2011, concentration and emissions of greenhouse gases have skyrocketed. As a matter of fact, the first 2 decades of the 21st century caused an increase of 1 degree Celsius for our global temperature. This too has led to an increase in sea level up to 20 centimeters since the beginning of the industrial period. Now you may be wondering, what kind of significance would 1 degree Celsius, have to our planet? If you were to increase your air conditioner up to 1 degree Celsius, you wouldn't feel a thing, right? Now let's look at it from another perspective. If your body got a fever and your body temperature will increase by 1 degree Celsius, your immune system would go haywire, would it not? The same applies to our planet. For every 0.5 degrees Celsius increase in global temperatures, the intensity and frequency of natural disasters such as floods, tropical cyclones, and ecological and agricultural droughts are to increase. Hence, The effects of global warming not only harms the planet, but its inhibitors too. This leads to my next point, the effects of global warming towards humans. The World Health Organization recorded that the burning of fossil fuels, such as oil and coal, was responsible for 8.7 million deaths globally in 2018. While the air pollution also affects developed and developing countries alike, low and middle income countries experience the highest burden, where the highest toll comes from Western Pacific and the Southeast Asian countries. Thankfully, COVID-19 has decreased human activity and gas emissions by quite a large margin due to strict lockdown measures. Well, for a while at least. COVID-19 caused carbon emissions to decrease by 2 gigatons with a decline of 5.8% during April 2020. Despite the sudden rebound during 2020, it is anticipated that this trend won't continue much longer. It is estimated that the oil demand will increase by 650 megatons and the demand for coal will increase by 640 megatons by the end of the year. Carbon emissions are also projected to reach a whopping 7.35 gigatons by the end of the year, exceeding the previous record by 22%. By hearing all of this grim news, you may be wondering, where do all these carbon emissions even come from? Well, as of 2021, I can tell you that the main benefactor of these carbon emissions comes from none other than our good old friend, electricity.
Electricity, it's something we depend on every day, whether it's to get latest updates on global affairs or just to do day-to-day tasks. But we don't tend to stop and think, where are we getting power? In Malaysia, a still developing nation, we still highly depend on unrenewable sources to supply our national power grid, depending mostly on oil, natural gas, and coal. The total CO2 emission from the energy industry in Malaysia, according to IEA, has increased 359.76% from 1990 and has peaked at a total of 238.04 megatons of CO2. Globally, 80.9% of our total energy supply is powered by unrenewable sources, with fossil fuels being the biggest contributor. Naturally, this has pushed the global energy-related CO2 emissions in 2021 to 33 gigatons. Let that sink in. According to the World Economy Research Journal, renewable energy consumption will significantly lower global CO2 emissions. Even though there are a lot of evidence that renewable energy is good, many countries stray far from investing huge chunks of money into green energy. Through this presentation, we will explore the question, how do we stop CO2 emissions from energy industry and make the transition to green energy easier and even quicker? To answer this, we did a systematic review on multiple papers and studies that had relevance to our problem statement. Then we analyzed the data and information found in the studies and separated it into potential solutions before coming to a conclusion. These are our goals in the review. In the review, we separated our search for a solution into two categories, technological and legislative. We did this to ensure that our solution will be all-rounded and intersectional, allowing for greater impact on achieving our goals. From a technological standpoint, we would suggest greater investment in carbon capture system, or CCS for short. CCS involves the sequestering of CO2 gases from industrial places like fossil fuel combustion systems. Studies have done by scientists from Stangeland in 2020 has shown that this method has reduced 1.794% CO2 gases emitted by these industries. It is also worth noting that it has been expected for exponential growth during 2030 and 2040, where the reduction will increase to 15.182% and 42.142% respectively. Another technological solution is solar energy utilization. From data collected, it is shown that system of absorption of solar energy is proven to be used as a source of energy that will cut off 30% of emission, which is roughly 90.3 tons per 1 kilometer square, with the link from the use of other sources of energy like biomass and natural gas in the country.
We suggest legislative policies to be taken into great consideration, just like the technologies. Legislative policies are proven to be effective to reduce the effects of global warming in these times if taken into serious enforcement. Our first goal is to limit global temperature rise by urging countries to increase the usage of carbon-free energy with a rigorous amount. When the 2015 United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC COP21 was held, a successful result was achieved by using this method, with over 190 countries that agreed to tackle global warming. Almost all the countries have reached into an agreement to cut down carbon emissions. Furthermore, our team found out that this initiative is effective, as the result has shown an increase of 9% of carbon-free energy usage all over the world. If this effort is successful, our research has shown that by 2028, it is possible that 50% of all energy sources all over the world are carbon-free. The second suggestion that we have is through innovative carbon pricing empowerment. Carbon pricing is a cost-effective method to help the effects of greenhouse gas emissions. We suggest that this method is important to be implemented by all countries all over the world, as suggested by strong economic analysis. Interesting results could be shown if the price of the carbon emissions permit were to be increased, with the data that has shown only 15% of the current global greenhouse gas emissions are covered by carbon pricing. We are suggesting to increase the coverage of this method. Furthermore, during 2016, there were $26 billion accumulated in this year alone through over 16 national governmental initiatives from the carbon pricing. This method is also being widely discussed in one of the greatest sub-national councils, for example, like the United States Climate Leadership Council. All the suggestions mentioned have already been proven to bring a great impact towards the world climate change as we know it. For example, looking back at 2015, the carbon-free movement have provided a very large impact towards countries to give them a push for their own independent national plans to help tackle climate change. Our report has shown that Australia had a significant revert as to reduce up to 28% of their country's carbon emissions by 2030. This goal would not be significant enough without the enlightenment or discussions of the carbon emissions topic from the international bodies. Secondly, we are going to expect that by 2030 and 2040, this method will reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases by 15.142% and 42.142% respectively. All this cannot be achieved without the discussions that were done during the international bodies conventions, just like the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
To end the presentation, let me give you a clear perspective on what we've accomplished through our actions. You can tell that our presentation has given you a clearer vision of the status quo regarding climate changes. In summary, my team has proven to you that although there are quite a few natural causes that have affected the Earth, the main cause of climate change is us humans. The melting of the iceberg, the deforestation, the factory and sewages that are polluting our air and sea are all because of us. The only way to stop it is if we take actions ourselves. Only we have the power to reverse the catastrophe that we have inflicted on our own planet for hundreds of years. We all want to live a life where we feel safe for our future generations, a future that is green and healthy for all living beings. It is our greed that will cost humanity its home, and so only we have the ability to fix our mistakes. Therefore, I urge everyone to take a minute and remind yourself and others on what will happen to Earth if global warming did happen.
I'm sure we are all amazed by the excellent video presentation from the Malay College Kuala Kangsar. Such an interesting topic must leave some of you wondering as to how, what, and why. Clear your heads and insert your questions in the live chat below. Now, let us welcome the judges back to the studio. Looks like we have our first question from user Raja N, which asks, in your opinion, which type of green energy product will be useful during this pandemic? Can our presenters please answer the question?
Sure. In my opinion, the type of green energy product that would be useful during this pandemic is solar panels. It's very expensive at the moment, but I think it could be a very useful investment for yourself. But not only solar panels, there's many types of green energy devices that you can have. You can have like small wind turbines in your house because nowadays it's no longer like the large wind turbines that we usually um, see in TVs, or if we Google wind turbines. There are smaller ones, smaller version, more compact ones. You can even DIY it yourself. So there's many things that you can do, like green energy products that you can use. There's no definitive answer. It really depends on your budget, and also where you're living. If you live in a very windy area, then go for a wind turbine if you can afford it. But if you live in a very a place where there's a lot of sun, and a lot of sun, a lot of like in a month or in the year, then you should go with a solar panel if you can afford it. And that applies to other green products like hydroponic power, like water mills, right? Um, yeah.
Thank you for the clear explanation. User Waner Ashila Hani binti Wan Jamaluddin would like to ask, the dominant safety concern about CCS is potential leaks, both slow and rapid. Worst case scenario, a large and sudden leak could happen due to pipeline rupture. Even so, why do you choose this method? Can our presenters please help clear the air?
Sure. So this is a worst case scenario. In any situation, there is a worst case scenario. Let's say oil spills, but we still use oil even though it's not safe for the environment, and that's not even the worst case scenario. There's a lot of things that we use in our daily lives that have worst case scenarios like this. But CCS is something very prominent, and our number one goal right now is to essentially reduce the greenhouse gases, especially carbon dioxide and other harmful gases in our atmosphere, to slow global warming and potentially eliminate it. And that's why we really wanted to look into CCS, carbon capture systems. But there are other systems. This is not.
May I continue to present my Arif? So what Arif said regarding CCS was that, as we know that CCS, and we've considered the worst case scenario, and just as what Arif said before, even what we anticipate as the worst case scenario may not even be the worst case. So when it comes to CCS and carbon capturing and any other kinds of green technology, we believe that it's the most effective, considering that especially during the sudden rise again and the sudden steady increase of carbon emissions, we believe that capturing carbon right now has to be the main priority, as in our video we have also told you that carbon release and carbon footprints has been a main contributor to global warming.
Thank you, presenter, for the clear explanation. Now I'd like to invite the judges to pose any questions to the presenters.
All right, good morning. All right, just now you said that the solar panel is expensive to be used. Okay, what about in our country? If solar panel is expensive, so what do you think is the best alternative for the solar panel?
Green energy right now, commercially to use for ourselves is very expensive. But if you're using a lot, I think in that case scenario, it's a very different scenario, because if you want to compare like oil and solar panels right now, I think it's much more cheaper than solar panels. If you want to compare 2-3 decades ago, it's very expensive, but now it's somewhat affordable. It's still expensive, but it's affordable. For commercial usage or like things to use at home, yes, that isn't something that is plausible for many people, and I don't think there's an alternative to that. It's something more focused towards governments and companies to take initiatives and take this into consideration to actually have solar panels, and we already have solar farms around in Malaysia, and not in just in Malaysia, around the world. It's a concept that is not new, and it's something that is being implemented all around. And I think through innovation we can make solar panels cheaper so that people can use it. But to answer your question directly, I don't think there is a cheaper alternative. If you want to be able to like power your whole house with solar panel, it's a true investment, but it's worth it in the long run.
Next. We would love to continue with such an exciting question and answer session, but unfortunately, time is up. Thank you to our presenters for answering the audience's curiosities, and thank you for the judges for joining us. Once again, I would like to thank Hanif bin Firdaus and Arif bin Ami Ali for joining with us in the studio and sharing with us with your video presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to share an interesting fact about FRSIS. FRSIS, or Fully Residential Schools International Symposium, is closely based around the idea of producing effective leaders who are aware of current issues. Not only that, the sub-team are also related to Sustainable Development Goals outlined by United Nations. There are 17 SDGs in total, but this track specifically focuses on the 9th SDG, being on the topic of industry, innovative, and infrastructure.
Interesting, Atir. Now let us move on with the second team from today. From Sekolah Menengah Sains Tuan Ku Jaafar, we have Maisara Hana Mushahar and Nur Nadia Badisha binti Nur Azmi. And welcome to the studio, and have them present your video presentation, How the Pandemic Affected the Emissions of Greenhouse Gases and Climate Change.
Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. We are from SMS Tuan Ku Jaafar with our presentation on how the pandemic affected the emission of greenhouse gases and climate change. We, the Aurea Ligers, supervised by Puan Hajar Nur Azila, consists of Muhammad Safwan, Nur Nadia Narisha, Ishra Shuhada, and myself, Maisara Hana.
The outbreak of the COVID-19 had affected global energy consumption that mainly caused by the changes in human activities during the pandemic. Human activities were highly associated with the rate of emission of greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide and nitrogen. A research has been done by Liquid in April 2020 under the assumption that this emission reduction were scaled based on the mandated lockdown intensity. The result shows that the daily emission was 70% less than the daily emission in 2019. The drop in percentage was highly related to the human activities that mainly caused the greenhouse gas emission, which are from the transportation sector, residential and commercial sector, and industrial sector. I will carry on with my point with the transportation sector. Malaysia produced about 42.43 million metric tons of carbon dioxide, which are precisely 22.9% of the amount of carbon dioxide emission in Malaysia. Road transport played a major share, which is about 85.2% of the total greenhouse gases emission from transportation, which primarily come from the fossil fuel burning of vehicles, such as cars, trucks, and planes. The outbreak of the COVID-19 has brought a huge impact on the transportation industry, which caused the decrease in greenhouse gas emission. This can be viewed from the perspective of sharp decline in transportation and lockdown mandate.
The second sector that lead to greenhouse gas emission are residential and commercial. Greenhouse gas emission from businesses and homes arise primarily from fossil fuels burned for heat, the use of certain products that contain greenhouse gases, and the handling of waste. This sector includes all homes and commercial businesses, excluding agricultural and industrial activities. Moving on to another point, namely air conditioners. Air conditioners are a modern wonder. They save countless lives during heat waves, cool giant servers to essentially make the internet possible, and in general, make life in one place more comfortable. Air conditioners consume large amount of electricity. The fluorocarbon compounds, which contain chlorine, used as refrigerant, deplete the ozone layer and contributed to climate change. Have you ever known that hydrofluorocarbon and chlorofluorocarbon are mainly from air conditioners, and they will rise into the stratosphere where the ultraviolet light frees the chlorine. A single chlorine atom can destroy thousands of ozone molecules. Because of this pandemic, many people use air conditioning in their homes to keep cool, but keeping our indoor climate cool by using air conditioner has made the outdoor climate much warmer. Then, as the earth goes warmer, we use more air conditioning, which warms the earth even more in a vicious feedback cycle that only going to get worse over time, and more people have access to air conditioning.
The positive impact of the COVID-19 toward the residential and commercial sector are the reduction of noise pollution. Noise pollution causes changing balance in predator and prey detection and avoidance. Thus, quality measure reduce economic activities and communication worldwide. Not to mention, the pandemic also made negative effect on the environment, which is likely related to humanity outcomes that harm the nature. The first one is municipal solid waste generation and the reduction of recycling. During the pandemic, the data shows an increase in the amount of the household waste, which can be related to the increase in demand for online shopping. As a result, many countries postpone their waste recycling activities to reduce the transmission of the disease, especially at the recycling facilities.
As for the third, we have the industrial sector. And what is generally known by society is that the industrial sector produces the goods and raw materials we use every day, directly and indirectly. For direct emission, it is produced at the facility by burning fuel and is influenced by the consumption of fossil fuel, leaks from natural gas, and the use of fuels in production. As for indirect emission, will occur off-site and is associated with facility use of electricity. So, one of the elements in this sector that largely contribute to greenhouse gas emission is actually the fashion industry. As we live in a modernized era, appearance play a major role into the society. And this has led to the production of approximately 2 billion shared annually on average. And what is not well known is that a lot of processes are involved in the making of clothes. Cotton needs to be harvested, then turned into slivers, then to sheets, then it needs to be woven by hand into clothes. And the journey of these materials from farm to factories, then to your local supermarket, produces a large carbon footprint. As movement control orders have been released by the government, the apparel production demand has generally decreased. On the facade, this may appear as a good sign for the environment. However, we should know, as people are staying more at home, demand for casual wear increased. This has led to increasing in cotton production demand, because cotton is on the top list for most comfortable clothing materials. This has become an issue, because cotton is actually the crop that uses the most pesticide and insecticides in the world.
To another point, which is disposable item. Since pandemic, the personal protective equipment, also known as PPE, has already increased plastic pollution. In response to high PPE demand among the general public, healthcare workers, and service workers. Also, the single-use face mask production in China soared to 160 million per day in February, about 12 times from the usual quantity. Not only that, individual choice during lockdowns are also increasing the plastic demand. As our climate change, the planet gets hotter, the plastic breakdowns into more methane and ethylene, increasing the rate of climate change, and so they're perpetuating the cycle. The losses is due to pandemic, the flow of food delivery service has been resistant, and the service also increased. This business involved disposable items such as paper bags, food container, forks, spoon, drink cup, and more. This will increase the production, and there will be a lot of waste and also the release of greenhouse gases.
The greenhouse gas emission caused several changes in climate, including glaciers melting. Carbon dioxide emission produced by human activities affected the climate as it caused the thinning of the ozone layer. The ultraviolet light from the sun warms up the planet, which causes the glaciers to melt and cause the sea level to rise. This will eventually lead to the disappearance and extinction of numerous species, as glaciers are the natural habitat of terrestrial and aquatic animals. Therefore, the reduction and shutdown of human activities due to lockdown measures slow down the effect of human activities worldwide. To be mentioned, the greenhouse gas emission caused flower blooming out of the season. The thinning of the ozone layer resulting in high temperature receive and impacts a crop's optimal growth period as it receives more radiation from the sun. Thus, most crops experience negative effects on the amount and quality of yields. The crop produce flower earlier or slower than they usually do, which cause pollinated plants not synchronized due to migratory patterns.
The source of the fact of greenhouse gas emission is higher ocean temperature. Did you know that carbon dioxide continue at record levels despite COVID-19 lockdowns? The ocean absorbs vast quantities of heat as a result of increased concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, mainly from fossil fuel consumption, such as from the coal. The ocean is being disproportionately impacted by increasing carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas emission from human activities. The carbon dioxide reacts with seawater, lowering its pH and leading to ocean acidification. Increasing ocean temperature affect the marine species and ecosystem. It will cause coral bleaching and the loss of breeding grounds for marine fishes and mammals. It also affects the benefits humans derive from the ocean, such as strengthening food security, increasing the prevalence of disease, and causing more extreme weather events. The first way is by investing in green projects. The renewable fossil fuels pollutes the air and contributes to global warming. Time to get rid of this ancient energy source and use energy more efficiently. We can turn wine into energy by making the wine turbine. The wine turbine project, made from bike parts and discarded aluminium, gets bonus point for using recycled pot. Next, we can do a gardening project. Planting a garden will literally make the world greener place and also install solar cells on the rooftop. Not only that, we need to reduce the brightness of computer screens. And last but not least, install the automatic movement sensor to switch off lights in buildings.
Next outcome to diminish the greenhouse gas emission is through the behavioral changes in community. For example, converting biodegradable waste into a useful soil fertilizer instead of sending it straight to the landfill. Use public transportation or carpooling for commuting in cities instead of individual vehicles to reduce the greenhouse gas emission. Recycle paper, metal, plastic and glass materials. Growing trees together with the annual and perennial crops in a given area. By adopting of this behavioral solution, we could mitigate 19.9% to 36.8% of emission between 2020 and 2050.
As another result, we should encourage the practice in utilizing green technologies. As we all know, green technologies are deemed to be environment friendly as it reduces waste and carbon footprint while it does not release greenhouse gas. In addition, green technologies also work more efficiently as it consumes less energy than conventional technologies.
For example, like the country China that owns most of the electrical buses in the world.
So the conclusion is we live in a complex system and our actions have an impact. That means everything we do will affect our lives.
Wow, I'm sure we are all amazed by the excellent video presentation from Sekolah Menengah Sains Tuanku Jaafar. Such an interesting topic must keep some of you wondering as to how, what, and why. Clear ahead and enter your question in the live chat. But before that, do allow me to re-invite our judges for today. Welcome, judges. There seems to be an inquiry from user Kang Likwa. They ask, do you think it is necessary to change current PPE to reusable PPE? Can our presenters kindly answer?
Okay, I'll take that question. First of all, thank you, Khalifah, for asking me that. So I think it is necessary to change current PPE to reusable PPE since PPE has become part of our daily life for now. A lot of people use it. Healthcare workers, public workers use it. So why not we change it into reusable PPE so that we can protect both Earth and planet and also people.
Thank you, presenter, for the brief explanation. Now, user Nurhana would like to know what inspired you to do a research about this topic. Presenters, please help clear the air.
Alright, I'll take this question. Firstly, thank you, Nurhana, for your inquiry. So, in the first phase of our research, we have known that that the pandemic has changed human activities, and this has widely changed the range of carbon emission. So we find it fascinating in a way that the human activities can largely contribute to our surrounding. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, presenters. Now, I'd like to invite our judges to pose any questions to the presenters or even comment about their video research.
Very good morning. Okay, Doctor, go ahead.
Okay, all right, thanks. Yeah. Actually, I just would like to find out a little bit. Can you elaborate on your research procedure? How did you guys collect the data for this presentation, for this study?
All right, I will answer for this question. So for the first phase, we did research through data research through the internet and through a few websites like Google Scholar and Pocket. We divide our research into a few parts like how to overcome it, how to overcome this issue, then how to overcome this issue, and in what way the greenhouse gas emission affected our environment.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'd like to invite another judge to pose any question to the presenters or even comment about their research videos.
Okay, good morning. Actually, my question was similar to Dr. Ann's at first. I've got another question though. Could you explain, I mean, we are going to green technology and all that, right? Okay. Could you explain the economics? Okay, you've heard of electric vehicles, right? Okay, could you explain the economics of using electric vehicles price-wise for the general public? We know that it's quite expensive.
All right, so one of the country that uses electrical transportation are China. They have most of the electric buses and cars in the world. So the vehicle is very pricey, like you said. The vehicle is very pricey. So in the near future, it might be a bit hard for countries to switch directly to electrical vehicles. So maybe in the near future we will invent cheaper we will invent vehicles with cheaper materials. So maybe it will be more financially stable for us to do that.
Okay, thank you.
We would love to continue with such an exciting question and answer session, but unfortunately, time is up. Thank you to our presenters from Sekolah Menengah Sains Tuanku Jaafar for answering the audience's question.
Now, before we continue with the next presentation, I would like to share a few things about this year's FRSIS. With the sudden rise of the COVID-19 pandemic, industries everywhere have been hit and forced to shift to the virtual world, following the 9th SDG's mission statement, which is to build resilient infrastructure, promote sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. We're encouraging students to realize the problems society has to face and how innovation and technology affects them, for the better or for the worse, and to have them think outside the box and create possible solutions. That is all for my sharings.
Thank you, Alia. Now, next in line, I'd like to invite Hanan Zulaika binti Hasbullah and Ashran bin Nur Hakimi from Sekolah Menengah Sains Selangor to present their video presentation entitled The Call for a New Change. Welcome, presenters.
Climate change has been worsening as the years go by. This comes from multiple factors, but the biggest factor we have to look at are actually human activities. Statistics brought out from a website called Our World in Data suggested that a majority of greenhouse gas emissions are actually from its use in energy, such as its use in industry, transportation, and even energy use in buildings, as you can see from this data right here. Now, as bad as it sounds, there's actually worse. You see, the climate crisis isn't actually the only global crisis that us humans are facing in the 21st century. In fact, on the 31st of December 2019, the first case of a new virus was reported. The number of infections around the world escalated so quickly that within a span of a few months, it was announced a global pandemic. This new virus was called COVID-19. The global pandemic was a huge shock for many people around the world. Nobody was prepared to face such a calamity in such a short span of time. Everyone then had to adapt to new norms such as wearing a mask when you're in public, practicing social distancing, to even bring your hand sanitizer wherever you go. Because of the pandemic, we witnessed travel bans and a pause in so many industries around the globe. This fortunately has had a positive effect towards the climate. However, the pandemic is surely bound to end soon. People will be able to go back to concerts, dine in restaurants, and everything will go back to usual as COVID-19 gets eradicated. When this happens, the climate crisis will definitely worsen, if not now, in the future. Can we still manage climate change when there are no longer travel bans and industries start to operate in full swing? We will be able to still keep up with the new norms in order to sustain the improvements regarding climate change that we have achieved unintentionally. This is where our group will evidently prove to you the link between COVID-19 and how we manage the global climate crisis. Before we go any further, let us look into how we are currently managing our climate crisis. This leads us to the 13th Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations.
SDG13's main focus is to make sure that urgent action is taken as a global endeavor to combat climate change. With these goals in mind, a couple of treaties have been established, including the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreement. First off, the Kyoto Protocol that was adopted in Kyoto, Japan on the 11th of December 1997 and was enforced on the 16th of February 2005. This protocol, which initiates the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, involves 192 parties. Under the Kyoto Protocol, developing countries are not required to reduce emissions unless developed countries supply funding and technology. This is to satisfy three purposes. Firstly, to avoid restrictions on the development of the country, since gas emissions are strongly linked to the industrial capacity of the country's technology. Secondly, to encourage selling of emission credits to nations which are incapable of satisfying their emissions targets. Lastly, to earn money and technologies for the purpose of low-carbon investments from annexed countries. As of the 31st of December of 2020, the Kyoto Protocol has been discontinued as a result of countries failing to meet their greenhouse gas reduction targets. Thus, the Paris Agreement is set out to improve upon and replace the Kyoto Protocol. Now, let's dive into the Paris Agreement. The agreement, which involves 191 parties, was adopted in 2015 and its focal point is to strengthen the global reaction towards the threat of climate change. It also focuses on strengthening the ability of countries in dealing with the impacts of climate change. A few countries involved with the Paris Agreement are Denmark, Australia, Japan, and even our beloved country Malaysia. The Paris Agreement sets long-term goals to lead all nations to first, significantly lessen global greenhouse gas emissions, to restrain the global temperature increasing this century to only 2 degrees Celsius, while pursuing efforts to limit the increase much further to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Secondly, to review countries' commitments every 5 years. Lastly, to provide to developing countries in order to mitigate climate change, strengthen resilience, and enhance abilities to adapt to climate change. The Paris Agreement provides a long-lasting framework guiding the global effort for decades to come. This marks a starting point of a transition towards a net zero emissions world. The implementation of this agreement is also very essential for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, let us bring you to how COVID-19 has impacted our climate.
The pandemic we face right now has caused several restrictions
to help prevent the transmission rate of the COVID-19 virus. For instance, almost all economic sectors were closed, such as industries and factories, transportation and tourism. On top of that, a strict movement control order has been implemented. COVID-19 has definitely played a big role in helping decrease the total amount of greenhouse gases emitted worldwide. According to a few researchers from the Bharati Vidyapith Dean University in Pune, India, a substantial reduction in the demand of fossil oil and electricity has been reported. For instance, in India, there has been an approximately 18.17% decline in its carbon dioxide emissions. Early in the year of 2020, China has also experienced the greatest reduction due to the lockdown of cities and industries to tame the initial spread of coronavirus. Did you know carbon dioxide emissions in China declined by an estimated 315 million tons? That's roughly the annual carbon emissions of France. The United States has also contributed with nearly 13% decrease in its emissions since there has been a major decline in vehicle transportation that started with the lockdown earlier in March and continued as the global pandemic escalated at the end of the year. Although it seems like the pandemic has resulted in a good outcome for our environment, mainly our climate, we need to keep in mind that the lockdown is only temporary and is bound to end soon. This means the greenhouse gas emissions will start to rise as the economy starts, and we will be back to square one. So, what can we do to prevent that?
To top it all off, we've come up with a couple of our own ideas and solutions on how we are going to deal with the climate crisis and change in the future. Our main idea would be to promote the usage of carbon-free technologies in industrial activities to reduce the amount of carbon emissions towards the atmosphere. The most basic example of these carbon-free technologies are by using renewable energy as the main energy source for factories. This will get rid of those huge chimneys which emit harmful substances towards the atmosphere, endangering the future generations, and of course to maintain the drop in emissions during the pandemic. Moving on, we suggest every country to set Singapore as an example on how they reduce their emissions by raising the price of cars on the market. This would promote the usage of public transportation which releases less emissions based on cars and bikes. And of course, the price of electric cars which emits less pollutants would of course be much cheaper. And last but not least, the government should create an educational subject that emphasizes these environmental issues and how to improve the state of the world as it is now. By doing such a simple task, this could produce a better generation which is more responsible towards the current state of the climate. Furthermore, the law could also be reinforced to be more strict and clear so that no grey areas are found for civilians to take advantage. As a final observation, we can conclude that COVID-19 shouldn't be seen as an unforeseen nightmare, but instead as a golden opportunity to improve ourselves in terms of discipline and responsibility, in this case, by handling our current climate change. In addition, this can be a way to train ourselves to see things in a better light. Our principles are what help us to move forward and prosper for a better future, and without any effort, there won't be a promise for a better tomorrow. Thank you.
We hope that our presentation was able to help educate people about our climate. Once again, thank you.
An outstanding video research from Sekolah Menengah Sains Selangor. To the audience, do not hesitate to ask questions and type it out in the live chat. We are sure the presenters are glad to answer them. Before moving on, let us re-invite the judges to the studio with us. Looks like we have first question from user Wanur Ashilahani, which asks, you said Paris Agreement brought positive impacts in supporting the SDG13. However, countries in it, like Saudi Arabia, did not meet the rules in the agreement. So how can you prove it is still relevant? Can our presenters please answer the question?
I will gladly answer the question. Thank you. Thank you, Wanur Ashila, for that amazing question. So, while current pledges under the Paris Agreement are insufficient for reaching the set temperature goals, there's a mechanism of increased ambition. The Paris Agreement has been successfully used in climate litigation, forcing countries and oil companies to strengthen their climate action. That's my answer. Thank you.
Next, you have an inquiry from user Raja N. They ask, when our country is an oil production country, why should we put a high price to purchase cars that use petrol? Can our presenters kindly answer?
Thank you, Raja N, for that question. When our country is an oil production country, why should we put high price to purchase cars that use petrol? Well, first of all, we need to put into account that petrol cars are one of the the leading cause for transportation, which emits carbon emissions. Now, the best solution for us to actually change this is by using electrical cars, and there's really no shortcut we can use to change that. If our country depends on oils, then we have to find a way to change our income by using different kinds of sources of income. So to answer the question, why should we put a high price to purchase cars that use petrol? Is because it's for the benefit of the climate, and it's for the best of the climate. If we let the use of all used cars or petrol, it's going to significantly not change at all our global pollution. That's for me. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now I'd like to invite one of the judges to pose any question to the presenters.
Okay, good morning again. Right, earlier on in your presentation, you put up Singapore as an example for our region, right? Okay, and we all know how disciplined Singaporeans are. And you also mentioned the syllabus where we can, the government or the Ministry of Education could probably put it as one of the subjects. Now, let's bring Malaysia into the equation, and knowing our people, okay, how do you think we could deal with this?
Thank you, Ms. Wan, for the question. Let me just rephrase the question. The question was Singapore as an example, and also our education system. So how effective this is was the question, was it?
For Malaysians, knowing our people compared to Singaporeans.
Knowing our people compared to Singapore. I believe that first of all, we should make sure, like for the education part, we should it's always a step further, because I believe that the education in Malaysia, at least, we don't put enough emphasis towards global climate and the moralities relating to our climate and basically just eco-friendly stuff. So our suggestion was to implement more of a subject instead of like we do have like clubs, you know, for example, like we have clubs where, for example, the club for the eco clubs where you know they do activities to help you know to educate and you know do certain activities which like planting trees and stuff. We know that they have those things, but we need a more firm like education for students. For example, we can make a specific subject where students have to pass, which is it doesn't have to be a hard subject. It should just be a normal subject where we educate students on what we can do to combat climate change, perhaps, or maybe what we can do, like what is the importance of making sure our climate is in a good condition. And for the Singapore, as we know, Singapore uses Singapore.
know whether Captain Review is because he is missing and we check every
I'm so sorry. I apologize for that. We do believe that Singapore, as an example, because Singapore, we know that they increase the price of cars because they have small roads and they want to reduce the amount of cars on the road. But at the same time, they also reduce the amount of. At the same time, they reduce the amount of carbon emissions by doing so. So by actually reducing the amount of reducing the price of electrical cars in Malaysia or in any country, we will endorse the people of said country to actually buy electrical cars instead of petrol cars. Thank you.
I do have something to add. So, okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much to the judges for joining us in the studio and the presenters Ashran bin Nur Hakimi and Hanan Zulaika binti Hasbullah. Thank you so much to presenters from Sekolah Menengah Sains Selangor.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to share an interesting fact about FRSIS. For information, this year's FRSIS has received participation from countries such as India, Thailand, Turkey, Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines. This year, a total of 105 international participants have come together in this auspicious event. In addition, the total number of participants is around 470 students comprising all 70 fully residential schools. To name a few, there are participants from Sekolah Tuanku Abdul Rahman, Sekolah Menengah Sains Miri, the Malay College, Sekolah Menengah Sains Jelly, the Royal Military College, Sekolah Berasrama Penuh Integrasi Salindar, and many others.
Thank you, Atira. Now, let us move on by inviting presenters from Sekolah Berasrama Penuh Integrasi Tun Abdul Razak, Nur Najwa Auni binti Abdul Razak, and Ahmad Shazwan bin Muhtazar to the studio and have them present their research video entitled Globalization Environmental Circumstances. Welcome to the studio, presenters. Looks like our presenters are not yet here. Atira, why don't you share one more information about this year's FRSIS?
I'd love to. Ladies and gentlemen, just to let you know, the first ever FRSIS was hosted by Sekolah Tun Fatimah in 2011 with the theme Students, a Catalyst of Change for a Better Tomorrow. Ever since its first inception in 2011, FRSIS has been held for a total of 8 times, making this year the 9th one held, and this is the first time it's held online. The last FRSIS held was hosted by Sekolah Berasrama Penuh Integrasi Gombak in 2019. The theme was Smart Industry Reforming the World. During the closing ceremony, the Putri Kencana dance group from Sekolah Seri Puteri performed gracefully, indicating that Sekolah Seri Puteri were to be the next host school for FRSIS.
Looks like our presenters are already here. Now let me re-invite Nur Najwa Auni binti Abdul Razak and Ahmad Shazwan bin Muhtazar to the studio and have them present their research video.
Hi everyone, I wish you all have a good day. Let me introduce my teammates. This is Auni, Ifa, Aiman, and my name is Shazwan. As you can see on the screen, our topic is basically related to environment, which is globalization, environmental circumstances. The development of a novel coronavirus in Wuhan City in December 2019 has left people around the world in such terrible condition. By the end of this talk, you guys will be familiar with the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic, which has been a major issue in this period.
For the first question is, does COVID-19 pandemic could impact the welfare of animals? So we conclude that animal welfare is a shared responsibility, and accordingly, a multi-sectoral approach to animal welfare during a crisis is required. Consequently, the pandemic threatened to impact the welfare of animals, because animals are integral with human society, and animals are also contribute to human well-being, and their welfare often depends on the capacity of humans to provide care for them. A significant risk to animal welfare that defied planning was the extent to which human movement was restricted. Most organizations and individuals with animals under their care had emergency preparedness plans in place for various scenarios. However, the restrictions on human movement to contain the spread of COVID-19, coupled with the economic impact and the health effect of COVID-19 on the skilled workforce, constituted a new threat to animal welfare for which there was no blueprint. Okay, so I will pass on to the next explanation. Thank you.
Thank you for giving a great cooperation with the previous explanation. So now I would explain the second question, which is, does air pollution increase the risk of getting infection? So the first one, air pollution is a well-known risk factor for various diseases, and perhaps also COVID-19 is the one of the most critical environmental health risk factors worldwide. So air pollution probably increases the risk of acute infections of the upper and lower respiratory tract. Several studies have reported an association between concentrations of particulate pollutants and COVID-19 incidence and mortality rates, which is from 4 to 7. A number of viruses and bacteria from aerosols and dust particles have been identified by means DNA and RNA sequencing, including COVID-19, that has recently been found on particulate matter. Because of dilution effects, however, it is improbable that particulates in outdoor air would constitute a real means of transmission. Air pollution promotes pro-inflammatory responses, reduces functionality of pulmonary epithelial barriers, reduces buccal transport, and leads to immune deficiencies, including a reduced ability to recognize and eliminate pathogens. In summary, it appears that air pollution may be a contributory factor to increase incidence and risk of COVID-19 in the most polluted cities. So I will pass this presentation to other member of this team. Thank you.
Thank you to the previous presenters. Next, waterways and rivers in the world look cleaner, the air getting more fresher, and also the wildlife has filled the open space. This pandemic seems to have many positive impacts on the environment. Many people were locked in the house while the nature are continuing to fix the earth problem. We can see that clean rivers and other water bodies have a significant positive effect on the aquatic life. Many species are returning to their natural habitat since the introduction of the lockdown. With many cruises suspended and the tourism subdued, consequently, the aquatic species are taking control in their hands. Scientists have discovered that the aquatic life are free from the powerful blast of the seismic gun test and also the noise from shipping. In addition, this lockdown also providing a flawless condition for olive-ridley turtles in the beaches. Turtles are less disturbed by tourists during this lockdown. The decreased human interruption this year would give these turtles enough time to incubate and hatch in peace. Since the beaches are people-free, that resulted in no accidental crashing of eggs, less garbage and plastics disposal to the marine environment.
COVID-19 also has a negative impact on our environment. The increase in non-recyclable waste is bound to occur by various factors and human activities. MCO is one of the reasons that people need to buy basic needs and sometimes they need to buy it through online shopping. That is why bubble wrap usage really increased and very needed by someone who make online business to make sure the item they post is in good condition. For your information, bubble wrap is categorized as a plastic. Plastic is one of the things that cannot be disposed of. Besides that, our frontliner need to use a variety of protective clothing such as PPE that cover the whole body, mask and face shield. Personal protective equipment should be used to protect themselves from droplet, from coughing, sneezing or other body fluids from infected patient and contaminated surface that may infect them. Personal protective equipment need to be supplied in large quantities as it need to be changed daily after using it. Instruction from our government that require people to wear a mask if they want to go out for certain matter is one of the factors increasing the non-recyclable waste. The attitude of some irresponsible people throwing a mask in the wrong place such as in river, drains and so on is very unprofessional. Waste is not only difficult to dispose of but also provide various negative impact on our environment.
We have now come to the end of our presentation. We hope that these informations can be useful for each one of you. Thank you. And an outstanding video research from Sekolah Berasrama Penuh Integrasi Tun Abdul Razak. To the audience, do not hesitate to ask questions and type it out into the live chat. We are sure the presenters are glad to answer them. Before that, let me re-invite our judges for today. User Nur Kaisara would like to know, what can we do to reduce the total amount usage of plastics? Can our presenters kindly answer?
Thank you, Nur Kaisar, for this pleasure question. So I would answer this question. What can we do to reduce that total amount uses of plastic? As we know that some of mall have their own thing that they used to use our own bag or because instead of using plastics, or else we can just like every time you go to the mall or supermarket, then you have to buy for your plastic bag using some money, 20 cents or 30 cents. I think there's a lot of mall using that kind of solution for that. Thank you so much. I think that's all.
Thank you, presenter, for the clear explanation. If there are any more questions, okay, there you go. User Africa15 would like to know, why do you think lockdown gives impact the conditions of the turtles and other animals? Can our presenters help clear the air?
Thank you for the questions. Why do you think lockdown impacts the condition of the turtles and other animals? Before, as we all know that beach is always be attraction place to all people. So turtles lays egg at the beach. So during this lockdown, people cannot go out and see and go to the beach. So the turtles can lay eggs at the beach peacefully without any miserable condition. Thank you.
Thank you for the great explanation, presenter. Now, I'd like to invite our judges to pose any question or even comment to the presenters' video researches. Sorry, thank you.
Hi, good morning. I think your the research focus is very interesting. You're looking into animal welfare and aquatic life and so on. But I'd just like to find out, how did you collect your data? How did you go about collecting data for this research?
Thank you for this pleasure question. So I would answer that. So basically, like at first, like it is hard for us to find for some informations about this welfare because we don't have any experience about this. So I'll be honest that my father is like science teacher, so he helped me to give some informations about it because this topic like animal welfare is not really usually people talk about it, so it's kind of hard for us to find for some information. But when you go to some conversation on Google Meet or some Zoom, so we found out that there's a lot of information on internet. So we choose turtles because we can see that a lot of bad environment upon to turtles matter. So I think that is quite good animals that we can choose because of it's like a famous animal that that was harmed from people. I think that's all from me. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I am sorry to interrupt, but sadly we are running out of time to continue with this question and answer session. Thank you so much for the really good answers from the presenters from Sekolah Berasrama Penuh Integrasi Tun Abdul Razak.
It seems that the best way to prevent and slow down transmission is to be well informed about the disease and how the virus spreads. Protect yourself and others from infection by staying at least 1 meter apart from others, wearing a properly fitted mask, and washing your hands with an alcohol-based rub frequently. Get vaccinated when it's your turn and follow the local guidance.
Thank you, Alia. Now, last but not least, I'd like to invite Devanshi Yadav and Janvi Chabra from St. Mark's Girls Senior Secondary School, New Delhi, India, to present their video presentation entitled Climate Crisis and Change During the Pandemic, A Promise of a Better Tomorrow. Welcome, presenters.
We, on the behalf of St. Mark's Girls Senior Secondary School, will be presenting a brief report on climate change and crisis during pandemic. So let's begin the video.
According to the UN, climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns These shifts may be natural, such as through variations in solar cycle. However, today the main drivers for climate change and crisis are human activities like generating electricity, transportation, and manufacturing. Global climate change has observable effects on the environment. Glaciers, ice on rivers and lakes is melting earlier than usual, and many plant and animal species have been affected. It has even led to increased natural calamities like droughts, wildfires, heat waves, storms, etc. World leaders in 2015 agreed upon 17 Sustainable Development Goals for a better future. Under Goal 13, Climate Action, urgent action needs to be taken to combat climate change and its problems. The targets of this goal are listed, which primarily adhere to raising awareness regarding climate change, innovations and commitments to protect the planet, formulate necessary measures in governmental policies, and promote green mechanisms.
Climate change is no longer some far-off problem. It is happening here. It is happening now. We are facing the biggest environmental challenge our species have ever seen. No matter what we are passionate about, something we care about will be affected by climate change. So what is the greenhouse effect and global warming? For centuries, burning of fossil fuels has released additional greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, trapping heat that would escape into space otherwise. The planet has already warmed 1 degree Celsius and temperatures could rise even more. Impacts of climate change. Climate change is happening too quickly for many species to adapt and has put nearly 20 to 30% of the species at the risk of extinction. Recent data shows that there'll be almost no summer sea ice cover left in the Arctic in the next few decades. If we talk about the oceans, oceans are vital carbon sinks, preventing carbon dioxide from reaching the upper atmosphere, which makes them even more acidic. Dying trees emit their stores of carbon dioxide, adding to atmospheric greenhouse gases and setting us on a course for runaway global warming. Here are the 3 ways in which climate change is already affecting people's lives. The first is health. Just what the doctor ordered, and we mean that quite literally. Medical professionals have increasingly been sounding the alarm about the risks and consequences of continually burning fossil fuels. Here's the problem. The same dirty fossil fuel emissions that contribute to the greenhouse effect can lead to respiratory diseases and even mental health issues. The second is home. For many living in the coastal communities, sea level rise could lead to an unwanted move. As our globe warms, glaciers melt and ocean water expands, leading seas to rise. The added volume of water creeping up coastlines slowly swallows lands and homes. The third is food. The same CO2 accumulating in our atmosphere thanks to fossil fuels is actually changing the composition of fruits and vegetables that we eat, making them less nutritious. Increased temperatures and weather extremes create challenges for the farmers who put food on our tables. Climate change refers to more than an increase in temperature. It also includes sea level rise, changes in weather patterns, and much more. Climate change is not only hitting close to home, it is knocking on our front door and demanding to come in.
COVID-19 is affecting the lives of millions of people and also the environment. The CO2 emissions and human mobility have been reduced, which improves air quality and encourages wild animals to come out and explore the cities. Scientists have confirmed that the air quality in certain regions have improved in recent weeks. As industries, aviation, and other means of transportation start, air pollution is reduced in countries severely affected by the virus, such as China, Italy, and Spain. A reduction in commuting due to work-from-home policies have also played its part in reducing carbon emissions. Human beings are part of nature, and all activities that impact the environment also impact us. However, this was accompanied with some negatives like Improper management of infectious biomedical waste has been a major threat to health and environment. It also became a challenge for the local waste management authorities. Also, the use of face masks, hand gloves, and other safety equipment have increased the amount of medical wastes. Due to the overuse of PPE kits at domestic level have concluded in acceleration of trash and plastic wastes.
Pandemic may have made an impact on climate change and the environment, but it is not enough to shift our focus away from the SDG13 and Paris Agreement goals. The changes due to COVID-19 are sadly highly transient. The year 2020 was still one of the warmest years on record. Though the emissions dropped significantly last year, carbon and methane concentrations in the atmosphere just reached their highest known level in many years. The atmospheric concentration of carbon rose to 419 parts per million in June 2021 based on the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association measurements. The methane concentrations also peaked, seeing the largest annual increase recorded since those measurements began in 1983. As you can see in the graph, around the start of December, the monthly emissions already surpassed their 2019 levels. The long-term negative impact on the environment easily outweighs the short-term benefits of the shutdown. Delays in investments in renewables and vehicle fuel economy alone could result in an additional 2,500 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide from 2020 to 2035, which could cause 40 deaths per month on average. The commercial and industrial electricity use may have been affected by the lockdown, but the decline was offset by the increased residential electricity use, and by June 2020, the consumption had largely returned to its original trend. The increased dependency on single-use plastics and low oil prices resulting from the lockdowns have had negative consequences. Despite the pandemic, the emissions have bounced back to the pre-pandemic levels by the end of 2020. The COVID-19 has made it ever so important to tackle the climate crisis and has actually made the effects of climate change very prominent.
Before moving ahead, I would like to give a brief account of an awareness survey that we conducted. According to the survey, most of the people, making up to 42.6% of the total responses, think that unemployment and overpopulation are the issues that require major attention, while 40% of the people think of climate change as the main matter of concern. But as a matter of fact, people are aware of the differences between climate change and global warming. As the chart depicts, most of the people, about 47.8%, don't think that global warming and climate change are similar. Yet, a large number of them, 27.4%, still believe that the two ideas mean the same. Moving ahead, we also know that people accept the bitter truth that human beings have contributed to the present climate crisis. We see that 60.5% of the people opt for human beings being the real cause of climate change, though nearly 35.1% of the people think that human beings, along with natural calamities, constitute the major causes of climate change. Furthermore, as per most of them, COVID-19 has had a key role in climate change in the past year. They think that the impacts of COVID-19 on climate change are indeed temporary. Additionally, those who think that COVID-19 has had certain impacts on climate change believe that the effects are positive, which makes up for 66.1% of the total responses. Following this, we see that most of the people, that is, 60.9%, state that the health of their knowns implemented in our country that deal with the issue of climate change. 46.1% of the people know this fact. 27% have no idea about this issue, while 27% are not sure about their stand. Most of the people, approximately 70%, also think that our ignorance towards the matter of climate change has strongly contributed to this crisis, while nearly 20% think that the impact of ignorance is moderate. While thinking about the solution, the majority of the people think that citizens can actually do something about the crisis. They believe that citizens can contribute to the solution to this problem. Last but not the least, above 85% of the people wish to be a part of the solution to this existing crisis.
What a brilliant video presentation by St. Mark's Girls Senior Secondary School, New Delhi, India. Let us re-invite the judges to the studio. However, the audience must have a lot of questions for the presenters. Do not let your curious mind stay silent, and please leave your questions in the chat box below. We have our first question from user Ainin Sophia Shasha, which asks, do you think weather and climate determine...
Right. User Ainin Sophia Shasha asks, do you think weather and climate determine whether COVID-19 occurs? Can our presenters kindly answer?
Yes, we think that weather and climate do affect where COVID-19 occurs, because when there is when the climate is more cold, we see more cases of COVID-19, and they say that when there is more heat, COVID-19 is people are less affected by COVID-19. So yes, we think that weather and climate change do affect COVID-19, and COVID-19 also affects our climate as well.
Such a crystal clear explanation presented. Let us now have our second question from user Raja N, which asks, what conclusion can you give based on your research? Can our presenters please answer?
Yes, so on the basis of what we have actually researched, we see that people are aware about the climate crisis, and they are also aware what global warming and climate crisis means separately. So we have seen very cooperative responses from all over the world, and then the research also concludes that COVID-19 has a very crucial role in determining the climate crisis that we are today, the existing climate crisis. And if not taken care of, it will be affecting all of our lives. And this is a very, very concerning issue.
Yes, because COVID-19 will for sure affect the world and the climate change, and in what way it affects, whether it is a positive or a negative way, it all depends on our actions. So COVID-19 has for sure made an impact, but that impact is temporary. But if we take urgent actions, we can make that impact permanent. So that is what we got to know from our research.
Thank you for the brilliant feedback, presenters. Looks like we have no more queries from the audience. Would the judges be kind enough to pose a few questions to the presenters?
Okay, hello. Hi. I'm not going to ask you a question, just a comment. It was a very interesting presentation. Learned a lot from you. The only thing is that I wish I'd seen you doing the presentation instead of just the slides. Okay, that's it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll surely consider it.
Thank you so much for the feedback, judges. Now, I'd like to invite another judge to pose any question or even comment at their video researches.
Hi, good morning. So I'd just like to ask, what was the most interesting part of doing this research for you personally? What did you enjoy or did not enjoy about it?
Good morning, ma'am. It's a pleasure to meet you. Yes, there have been unforgettable moments while working on this research. Working with such a cooperative team was indeed appreciative, and then the team has put in a lot of efforts to make the presentation. Additionally, getting an opportunity to learn something new out of the work we do is very important and it's very interesting. So that cannot be forgotten.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
A big round of applause for the presenters from St. Mark's Girls Senior Secondary School, New Delhi, India. For all the well-thought answers, we are tempted to continue the Q&A session. However, time is preventing us from doing so. Once again, I would like to thank presenters from St. Mark's Girls Senior Secondary School, New Delhi, India, Javanchi Yadav and Janvi Chabra. Thank you so much, presenters.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Before we adjourn, we would like to remind the audience once again that the online quiz posted will be open until tomorrow on Monday at 10 a.m. Make sure to not miss out on the quiz.
Thank you for tuning in. Our next session is at 2 p.m. We will be right back.